You are listening to the Mountainside podcast, and joining us in studio once again is my friend Dan Gates. He's a board member for Coloradans for Responsible Wildlife Management, and he has played an integral part in educating the general public on responsible wildlife management practices, the North American wildlife management model. This is somebody who cares about wildlife and the landscapes that they live on, and I always enjoy having him in studio. This was an incredible conversation, and I encourage you to listen to it in its entirety. We should be talking about some of this on mic. Dan, first off, thank you so much. Congratulations on the victory. This is your fourth time or fifth time on this year, I think?
I think fourth.
Fourth,
Yeah,
okay.
I think so.
I think we did about 8 podcasts on
Ballot
127.
Yeah, because you had Luke and
the Ballot Initiative, and then all that leading up to it. And we talked about it ad nauseum, right? But me knowing you personally now, you've become a friend, and I'm super grateful for that, man. I always enjoy spending time with you, man.
Thanks.
You always make me laugh.
Likewise.
But I just wanted to congratulate you personally, man. Like we've never had a victory like this in the wildlife area when it comes to ballot initiatives. And I know you personally is what I was getting at. And I know that you're already on to the next one or the next step.
Yeah.
And I hope that you're taking a minute and just appreciating the victory.
Yeah, and I got to thank you guys. I mean, we are building a friendship up, and which is kind of remarkable because you start talking about politics, and that discussion kind of goes real short to most people. But politics that affect people's lives and politics that affect what people care about, like wildlife conservation and hunting and fishing and sustainable wildlife management, we found something that resonates with the general public more than what people alluded to before. And the friendships have been created out of that just by the professional relationships. I mean, without dropping names, the amount of people that have reached out to me and us of what we were doing and what we've done, and then what are we going to do, has been nothing less than remarkable. That you look at who calls me or who has emailed or who's walked up to me at a conference since the election or something, and you go, we impacted a hell of a lot of people, and we made friends along the way, and we made a hell of a lot of enemies with the opposition that we beat the crap out of too. So
yeah, well, I think more importantly to me, with this victory, it sets a tone moving forward that we're not going to be able to just roll over as easy or be pushed around, or that our voice wouldn't be heard outside of the hunting community because the hunting community is so small. But man, this really set a precedent for the future for my kids. This is something I've been worried about, and I've tried to be a voice for that on here. And it was honestly kind of the basis for starting this podcast, even though it's turned into much more of a personal thing with whatever guest I have in here, and hearing their stories and their perspective and changing my opinions occasionally too on stuff. But really the basis of this, and I still heavy emphasis on this, is preserving, what we have and what I grew up with, and a heritage that runs deep in my family. But I wanted my kids to experience that. That's why I still hunt today. It's one of the major reasons why I still hunt today. But this is a significant stamp to prove that it can be done. Yeah, and it all kind of landed on your shoulders, man. Like you were the face of it.
Well, and I had a guy call me on the way up here today that we see things from different perspectives. And he said, well, I don't know how you ended up with it. And I'm like, well, it's not because I just raised my hand. I stepped to the front of the line because nobody else was going to do it. When we created CRWM back in 2016 and officially formulated it in 2017, we knew that we were likely going to have some significant battles ahead of us. We were already playing on this landscape at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, the old Colorado Division of Wildlife before the merge, and at the Colorado General Assembly through the legislature. But we knew that we kept defeating the enemy every single level, that it was going to become a ballot issue. And if we had won all those other cases, all those other instances, who was going to be most likely to take on and hold the torch during the ballot initiative? There was no other option. And I need to emphasize that through this whole process, the partnerships that we gathered and the collaborations that we made, were nothing less than remarkable in themselves. But those organizations were not formulated to do the advocacy work. They weren't formulated to do the fight. They were formulated to talk about conservation and prop up the North American model from a habitat and species conservation perspective, not from I'm going to get kicked in the nuts and now what am I going to do mentality. And that's why we did what we did. Our mission is to enhance, promote, and defend the North American model of wildlife conservation and responsible wildlife management, period. We don't have a membership. We don't have any fancy magazines. Our fundraising banquets are just to be able to turn around and keep us alive. But we knew that for us to be participatory in this specific arena, we had to come in there with all the victories on our belt from before, like notches on a gun belt. And if we lost this, Colorado would sink when it came to wildlife management because of the undermining elements in the way that the proposition was written and what we did to try to stop the way it was written at the initial stages. Mm-hmm. No other organization was prepared to fully engage at that level in any way, shape, or form, monetarily or even structurally, amongst their boards and their bylaws. They could not act as nimbly as what we did because they have multiple boards of directors and they have multiple committees and they got tons of membership.
So much red tape, right?
Yeah, and look at. I mean, I had a conversation with Ryan Bronson with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation at the National Assembly of Sportsmen's Caucuses. I just got back from on Friday in Louisiana, and I asked Ryan, what could you have done before I even got it out of my mouth? No, It's not that they're too big. They're too big to be so nimble that you can act in a timely manner.
There's so many board members that got to vote on what their view is,
yeah,
right?
And when
crazy.
This thing came out, we had 10 days. Last September in 2023, we had 10 days to respond and to act.
Yeah, that's
monetarily
crazy.
And otherwise. Nobody was prepared to fully do that except for us. Not because we were so perfect. It's because we prepared for the inevitable, knowing that was probably the likely thing that we were going to have to deal with. And it came to fruition.
For seeing the future, man.
And knowing the enemy.
Yeah.
I don't create elk habitat. I don't turn around and pull fences. We don't turn around and do models and objectives and stuff. We work with the agency that does. Our scope of work was dealing with the enemy and trying to promote the science-based management message to the general public with a very, very tight, small budget to be able to do so. And the only way that we could do it was to continually play defense and fight what we could fight when we could fight it, when it was going to the commission or when it went to the General Assembly. We had no other tools available to us, except for we had a little bit of money in the bank from our other victories and from our other fundraising that we could turn around and at the drop of a hat expend on a short notice to say we're in the fight. Period. And that's what got us to the point to where we could catapult.
The grassroots, like boots on the ground. Like you were telling me right before we hit record that you did like 80 podcasts this year.
80.
That's insane.
This is 86 now. This is 86.
We haven't even put out that many here at the Mountainside this year. You know, I mean, we've had some other stuff.
What's funny is something, because Lauren Schrag with Good Bull Outdoors is taking care of our social media stuff. And he's helped because you remember when I said this before, we didn't have an Instagram page. I mean, when Charles hit me up, I think it was at the Western Hunt Expo, or it might have been Wild Sheep in January. And he says, "Do you have Instagram?" I'm like, "Yeah, we have Instagram." He said, "Let me see it." And he gets my phone and he looks and he goes, "You didn't register or log or anything." "Yeah, you got a deal here, but you don't have it." I said, "Well, you asked if I had Instagram."
Yeah.
But we never used it. We never did anything. Santino Castellanos put us on the Beyond the Cast podcast. And then you remember back in last December, we were asked to be on the Live Ranella show at the Mission Theater in downtown Denver. That was with Derek Wolf and stuff. That started to catapult us to a level of relevance and recognition of, well, maybe this is something I ought to pay attention to. Maybe this is something that I need to look at because there's a hell of a lot of talking and shaking and moving back and forth at different levels that this is going to affect me as a bow hunter or affect me as a lion hunter, or affect me as just a general sportsman. Those things catapulted us to a level of we were speaking on behalf of multiple groups and entities and individuals and methods of take and season structures and species pursuits.
Well, I think beyond this really proves the point that wildlife biology should not be at the ballot box because even with all those organizations and different groups of hunters and all that sort of stuff, it's still a very, very small percentage.
Okay.
Even if every one of those guys showed up to the ballot box, and correct me if I'm wrong, we still wouldn't have won this. So really, it's the outside influence for people that don't know and educating them and taking away some of this so extreme left and so extreme right ideology. And instead of listening to them, I feel like they were kind of in the middle, and they're like, well, let me listen to the perspective of, or let me go watch, Lionheart, or, there's a million different things. Or maybe I listen to this podcast and I'm not a hunter, but Dan Gates is on there talking about the importance of wildlife management and what it provides and the revenue it provides and how they manage species and where the actual numbers are at. I mean, there's so much education that was dropped out there. I learned a ton myself. And I'm a guy that's a hunter. You know? And it just turns around, and it, with confidence, then I can turn. And when I'm having a family dinner, with my daughter's friends' parents, and they're as far left leaning as you could possibly be, and we start talking about hunting, I can have a logical conversation with them and explain what it is from what I've learned. So I know people were doing that across the board.
They were doing that broadly in the way that we wanted to convey our message, hopefully that would resonate with the eventual target audience. And the target audience was that middle of the road group, not the pro hunters and not the anti-hunters, but the non-hunters, so to speak. And some of them voted for us and some of them voted against us. What we found, though, was the underlying element that they wanted information and education, and they wanted it to come from a science-based perspective. So it wasn't ours. Wasn't our bullshit that we kicked out.
No, it wasn't lies. It was just the facts.
We turned them over to the experts, the one that have been managing the wildlife in Colorado for the last 125 years. Now, if you look at the opposition's campaign, the proponents of 127, we were the Antichrist, and Parks and Wildlife was Hitler and Stalin. I mean, it was always their way or the highway. It was our facts, our data, our statistics, but they had none except for a bunch of made-up crap. So when we kept saying follow the science, and they kept saying follow our science. Well, their science didn't really matter because it came in with a very biased perspective and objective. Colorado Parks and Wildlife doesn't have a biased perspective.
We're talking about boots on the ground science too. I mean, all of Colorado Parks science and wildlife management comes from those guys that are in the field and what they're seeing in their districts, right?
Mm-hmm. That and years and years of studies and data and compilations of information from around the western United States. If you look at what Colorado Parks and Wildlife is doing right now on mountain lion management, they just got done with the West Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan that they've been able now to have peer-reviewed and stick that information out for public distribution and dissemination. The Upper Arkansas River Valley study, that is still going on, still has another year to go, is the most comprehensive 10-year-long mountain lion study in North America, let alone the world. Then you look at the East Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan that the commission just voted on week before last, after the election, to move that forward. And what happened? 40 different antis come out and get online to turn around and testify in opposition to the science-driven East Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan, to turn around and bastardize CPW's management techniques, even though they just got done losing on 127. They raised their flag. None of them showed up in person, but they turned around and got online and bitched and complained about the fallacies and the falsehoods and the misinformation of what CPW does. They think that CPW is the Antichrist when it comes to managing any wildlife, let alone mountain lions. And I think while Cats Aren't Trophies comes out and says, yeah, but over 1 million people voted to support this, a lot of those people were still uneducated because they didn't want mountain lions to be killed. But they didn't realize that mountain lions were going to continue to be killed whether we had a hunting season or not. There's still going to be a management side of things from a conflict resolution. It's just that hunters won't be part of it if they have their way.
Yeah. And it's almost even, to me, it's really disheartening for it to be done that way as somebody that cares about animals, because to watch them get thrown in a dumpster or just left to waste, really.
Yeah. I
mean, that's the worst thing that could happen.
If you get into a conversation with people like that, which we'll talk about a bunch of this, I know, but you're talking to people that are illogical. And in my mind, from what they've done to me and my family and my business and my livelihood, there's a level of lunacy there. if you look at who they are and where they come from and what they do and the points that they try to get across and the manners that they try to get it across, they're missing a few bricks. They're a few bricks shy of a full load. Watch what they do, and you just sit and look at it and go, how the hell can they even perceive that to be something that would resonate with the general public, whether it's pro-hunting, anti-hunting, or the middle of the road? Mm-hmm. They're off the rockers of what they want. They don't want to agree. They don't want to disagree. They want to turn around and just say, my way or the highway, and it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. Their facts and their data and their statistics are created in this like witch's brew with a tail of newt and a bat wing or something. They don't have the facts. I mean, when you call,
I just love your approach.
I mean, when they call in a veterinarian from Nebraska, a veterinarian who never has done any mountain lion work,
but was probably paid for his review.
Yeah. And that produces his perspective on science-based wildlife management when it comes to mountain lions. He's never touched a mountain lion in his freaking life. He's never drawn blood. He's never chased one with a pack of hounds to get him in a tree to turn around and put a collar on it. When you get Dan Ash, the former U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service director that came out in support of Proposition 127, and you listen to what he said, he lied. He was given a script, and the script that he conveyed, he lied. That was their message. The more that we bullshit, the more that we lie, the more that we deceive, the more we tell that message, the more it'll start to resonate with people.
Well, and it's crazy because they turn around and accuse the opposition of the very thing that they're doing.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I mean, that was a lot of their campaign.
And if you look at their stuff, and Mark Truex with PacWest Strategies was our strategist. It made me want to go ballistic because of their lies and their deceit and their fallacies and their falsehoods. Mark said, hey, look what they're doing. They're chasing our message. They're chasing us. They're not telling their story. They're chasing us. Of course, they targeted me on the front side of that. So every time that they targeted me or my family or my livelihood, that was less that they turn around and could convey their message to get out about what they were trying to talk. They hated me to the point.
Honestly, that was the best tactic, was trying to shut you down, but it's impossible, Dan.
I got a big
animal,
mouth,
dude.
Big mouth, weak mind, strong back, broad shoulders, and this is the sort of mentality that I have dealt with in my entire wildlife political career as a representative of different organizations and associations, and of living it. I live it, breathe it, eat it, talk it, screw it, drink it, sleep it. Everything that I do has to do with it. Don't tell me about what the general public wants or perceives when you've never been in their house to solve a wildlife conflict problem. Don't tell me that what needs to be done on a piece of open space where they're getting ready to build a subdivision, but the people next to it have a golf course and there's already some sort of a shopping center. Don't tell me. I've been doing this for 40 years in some sort of conflict resolution component, and I will tell anybody, not everything dies and not everything lives. And there's certain reasons for each one of those things to happen, but people are part of the ecosystem, and for them to come out and act like for the proponents of 127, to act like you and I and everybody else is not part of the ecosystem, we don't matter. Everything self-regulates. Everything takes care of itself. No, it does not. I've been involved in human and wildlife conflict resolution components. It does not self-regulate all the time.
Well, and I think just looking at it from, that bird's eye view or 30,000 feet or whatever you want to say, it's just common sense, man.
Well, that's where they lack.
And you've broke that down really well. And it's helped me convey it on here, or when I'm talking to somebody, it's like, look, we outnumber the wildlife. Like, that was a point that you brought up in one of our mini podcasts that we did this year. Mm-hmm. And I just drove that home, it's like, and then we have archaeological proof. I've talked to archaeologists and I can't even say that word.
Anthropologists.
Yes, on this very thing, and been on some studies with them where they needed a kind of a caveman dude, not very smart, right? But just to cut up meat. And I mean, this is thousands of years that we've been involved in the ecosystem, on the landscape, hunting, gathering, and also part of that food chain as well, being eaten, So it's like...
Well, we're part of it, but the management has come into play different than what it was. It was subsistence hunting and raping and pillaging of the natural resource in the 17, 18, and early 1900s. the Roosevelts and the Pinchots and the Hornadays and the Audubons and I mean, they implemented things because they saw what was happening. I had when I was in Florida, Louisiana last week, I did our normal legislative sportsman's caucus virtual, and I got Jody Stemler from the Boone and Crockett Club to come on. Smart gal. I mean, she'd be great to have on a podcast.
I'd love to have her on.
If I get to her first, maybe
I'm still trying to get in the books there.
But she talked about fair chase, and she talked about trophy hunting, and she talked about the poaching, and she talked about the position statements of Boone and Crockett. And the average person doesn't know why Boone and Crockett was ever created. They just think it's a trophy club.
Why was it?
It was created because when the Roosevelts and those guys came out and they saw the decimation of our wildlife resources, they knew that this stuff would not last forever. So they tried to capture or harvest the largest that there could be because they wanted to salvage it, put it on display because they knew it was never going to exist unless they turned around and did something to make sure that it continued in perpetuity. That's why they did it. Boone and Crockett, look, you ought to look that up. The Boone and Crockett, why it was created.
That's awesome, man.
People say, "Oh, it's a trophy hunting club." It's a mature record keeping club that did it on the basis of conservation and wildlife.
So they can see where the species is at and where it's declining and where it might need growth.
Yeah, I mean,
and to all people, I mean, something that looks like trophy hunting is actually, from a wildlife biology standpoint, is kind of what you want to take out of the gene pool.
Yeah,
you're right. Like a big bull, an old bull, something you don't. You want the best genealogy that you can have so that wildlife can continue to grow. It's
there's so many components of fair chase and trophy hunting that are going to be under attack or scrutiny over the course of the next several months. Cats Aren't Trophies is not going to be satisfied with this victory. They've already gone to the Parks and Wildlife Commission. They want to go there again. They want to go to the legislature. We have some rude surprises and awakenings for them when they go that route.
How many times can they go there and do this before
times.
they really?
Yeah.
So this could just be a reoccurring thing every
over and over and over. We beat them at every single level through the commission and through the legislature, and they went to the ballot. And now they want to go back to the commission. They want to go to the legislature, and they're already talking about going back to the ballot. To them, it's a fundraising opportunity. For us, it's a defense mechanism. We need to do it offensively, but for them, they raise money on losing money, if that makes sense. When they spend $3 or $4 million on something, they'd probably turn around and make 5 or 6 on it. Wayne Pacelli with Animal Welfare Action. Wayne Pacelli used to be the former CEO of HSUS, Humane Society of the United States. He was the instigator behind this particular campaign. And I want to mention that because the state chapter and the national chapters of the Humane Society of the United States did not support this measure. They weren't part of the funding. They weren't part of the messaging. Wild Earth Guardians was not part of the funding, was not part of the messaging. Why? Because they didn't agree with the tactics and the structure and the playbook that was written.
That's huge.
That's big. When you turn around and see that even the opposition isn't even on the same page for a variety of different reasons. Now, Mr. Pacelli, I'd say that with a reservation, Mr. He had sexual allegations when he was with HSUS, so they shit-canned him, kicked him to the curb. So these other entities decided we don't want to have anything to do with that sort of those sort of people and those sort of tactics. But when they saw what they were doing and the way that they were spreading that message and the lies, they condemned it by not participating. They didn't condone it. They condemned it and said, our hands are off. We don't want to have anything to do with this campaign. We might like the result, but we don't like the tactics, and we feel that if this is a loss, this is probably not in our best benefit to turn around and talk about animal welfare and animal rights over the course of the next 5 or 10 years.
Do you think that that's also why the Democratic Party didn't? I mean, they didn't come out and blatantly say you should vote no on.
No, did
they take a stand?
A neutral stand.
Neutral
stands.
And
some even came out in opposition. I presented to over 30 different Democratic committees or caucuses or groups over the course of the last 14 months. And the last closing words that I said to every single one of them, and a lot of times I was the only damn Republican in the room, and I looked like this, and you could tell that I was the only Republican.
No,
and I did go, but they did have meat for dinner one night.
Right?
So,
oh, really?
So, yeah, it wasn't lab grown beef.
Yeah.
But one of my last closing statements that I said at every single presentation was, "Don't believe me, don't believe the antis, Don't take our message. Don't take theirs. Go to cpw.state.co.us.
Boom.
That's who the facts of the data is from.
And that's all that they can put out.
Yeah.
They couldn't speak their own voice on it. It was a gag order, right?
Yeah, it was a gag order because of the way that the Colorado politics works. If the governor would have come out and said, you can say this, they could have said it. But he didn't. And if you look at what the governor did, the governor had a neutral position. The governor of the state of Colorado, who's one of the biggest animal rights advocates, along with his husband, came out with a neutral position. Neutral. Now, the agency itself that he oversees had to take no position, not a no position, no position. Neutral is a position. They couldn't even take the neutral position that the governor took.
And these are the people that we rely on to manage it.
That's
the wildest
you got the
thing
facts
to
and
me.
the data, and here's the study. We did 10 years of this. Here's the conflict. We've done 25 or 30 years of this. No, you can't say any of that. You have no position. Well,
But that always seems to happen in the situation. I mean, it happened with the Wolf Initiative too, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
When you have, it's obvious that you start to see the agenda-driven tactics by particular groups and entities and the influence or the sway that they have on specific segments of Colorado's wildlife resources. But it's not just about the wildlife. It's about the oil and gas. It's about the mining. It's about the agriculture. There's a lot of sway going a lot of different directions, and some of that stuff is coming to light based upon what happened. If you go back in a chronological order and look all the way back from January until now and see the mind-blowing things that came out, such as the Denver Post coming out with a opposition to 127.
Incredible.
From the editorial board.
Yeah.
The Denver Gazette, the Colorado Springs Gazette, seeing SWEPA, the Colorado Wildlife Employees Protective Association, coming out for the first time since 1947 to say we do not support ballot box biology. That was monumental. First time.
Wasn't it? There's a union too, right?
That's
SWEPA. That's the same one?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But for them to come out in opposition of ballot box biology. Now, they didn't come out in opposition of Proposition 127 because of legal reasons. They didn't want to get too muddy into the weeds and stuff. But they came out to say, we believe that wildlife should be managed by science and not through the ballot box, which is a stand-up toward 127 on our side. But if you look at the groups and the entities, they opposition bragged about, we have this commissioner and we have that commissioner. Well, we came out with 24 past commissioners with Parks and Wildlife that turned around and wrote their own op-ed, past ones. If you look at Jess Bouillot and Jack Murphy, and I'll name them by name because they're in a lawsuit right now from Safari Club International and Sportsman's Alliance about their involvement in the op-ed with former chair of the Parks and Wildlife Commission, Jim Pribble. That lawsuit was just put out last Thursday, Friday.
God, man, I'm so sick of deceit.
And
it's infuriating. Like, I don't, especially when it comes to something that is a natural resource, pleasure, and not only that, it's just an ecosystem, man. Like,
you and I and everybody else isn't part of the ecosystem, according to them.
Right.
Everything should just happen naturally. We shouldn't involve ourselves in any of it. It's just going to naturally happen through the cycle of natural occurrences, period. That's not the case. Maybe it was if we weren't here, but when we started getting here,
or maybe it is in Yellowstone Park, Well,
but even there, it's not because they leave.
Right. But I think that it's all stems from that one BBC video or whatever it was, Wolves Change Rivers or whatever.
Yeah.
I swear to God, this whole narrative has been built on the backbone of that.
That's
and it's
part
one
of
film.
The whole concept of what they consider to be rewilding. And rewilding has to do with all of their perspectives to make things like they were. You can't make things like they were when you've got 355 million people.
Yeah, we have to start killing people to make things they were and taking away their Teslas and taking away their Starbucks.
I mentioned at a commission meeting during the Wolf.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that publicly.
Well, I mentioned something to that point.
Well, it's funny because Bill Gates wants to do that.
Well, I know. I said at that meeting, I said, we have too many people. If we want to turn around and actually do what we need to do, we ought to start looking at the human population. And some gal at the back of the room screamed and hollered that I was advocating for genocide. I mean, screaming and hollered during the commission meeting. They had to remove her to get out of the meeting. And I didn't say anything to that point. I was just stating the fact that Well, for instance, and we've said this over and over, and you heard Luke Weedle say it on your podcast.
Luke's a great dude, by the way.
Badass.
Yeah, he's awesome.
You know,
yeah.
I mean, he's so,
I can't wait to have him back.
He's so articulate and so thoughtful when he presents, and sometimes he and I, we feed off of each other.
You guys are the best duo. It's the good cop, bad cop. And we all know who the bad cop is. But.
Well, yeah. I've got a certificate that says that now.
Yeah.
So.
No, I love it, man. You got to have that. You got to have that dynamic because people take in information different ways. I'm sure that there's people right now that are listening to this that love this, and there's probably some people that have shut it off. And if you shut it off, fuck you. You're not listening now anyways.
If you look at all I ask people to do is to make sure that they look at things with open eyes and look at the facts and the data and the statistics and the things that have gone into making sure we have what we have. If you go back to just on Mountain Lands, 1965, Luke said this. This was one of our sales pitches. The antis didn't want us to say it, even though they started chasing the message and try to get it down a rabbit hole. 1965, mountain lions in the state of Colorado were considered a nuisance. They could be shot at will, similar to a conflict resolution deal that I deal with right now. Big game hunters and the Game and Fish Department in 1965 realized that there was a problem with the mountain lion population, and they made them a big game species. When they did that, they automatically came under specific protections and season structures and quotas and bag limits. 1965, there was less than 200. Last year, roughly 4,400.
It is mind-blowing.
So when they say they're going to extirpate the lion population through regulated hunting, that hasn't been proven. They're going to kill all the females through regulated hunting. That hasn't been the case. You're going to knock off all the kittens through regulated hunting. That hasn't been the case. And keep in mind that in 1965, the state of Colorado had 1.9 million people in it. Now we got almost 6 million people. So
insane.
we've grown the human population. We've grown the mountain lion population by 20, 25 times. Where the hell does regulated hunting come in that they can turn around and argue? They argue because they lie.
Dude.
Yeah, they run the lies and the deceit to tell people that don't know. And I want to mention while I'm on that subject, the Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting last week before last in Lamar. Multiple people got on that were proponents of 127 that are now trying to change and alter the way the commission looks at mountain lion harvest. And they said, I just found out about this, and it's just appalling to me, and I can't believe that I haven't been aware, and I didn't know, and this was not brought to my attention. Well, Justin Nolan, who's actually on our board, he's also with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, and he owns Minturn Angler, so I'll give him a plug.
Yeah,
there.
He's a good guy.
Yeah,
I've ran into him at the archery range a few times. He's
but
awesome.
He got up and did history minute at testimony. He says, one thing that kind of concerns me is that all the things that are going on, that to consider somebody who just stated multiple times that I didn't even know that we were hunting mountain lions. I didn't even know that we had a mountain lion population to hunt. And Justin says, why are we listening to them? If they didn't know any of this, why are we taking their word or their concern about what's going on when they just found out about it 2 weeks ago since the election?
That is 1,000% right, in my opinion. And I've said this multiple times, especially since these ballot initiatives have come up, since the inception of the podcast, is like, mind your own business.
Leave me the
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah, right? Leave me the hell alone.
Unless you've gone out and done it, man. Like, I think that I almost feel like in a perfect world, if I had all the power, it's like, okay, you want to vote on a certain situation, you have to be put in that person's shoes for at least a 24-hour period. Mm-hmm. So you want to vote on lions? You have to go with a houndsman. You don't have to hunt a lion, but you have to be present when one goes down, or Parks and Wildlife trees.
Or we just chase them to the point to where we can put a collar on them or replace the collar.
100%. And then to take it even a step further, you want to defund the police, go on a ride along with them for a full shift and see what happens.
Yeah.
And see what
do
they
a drug
deal with.
raid with them.
Yeah.
So
and then
you go through the door first.
Right. I think that our outside influence on other people and how it affects other people is one of the most unhuman things that you can do.
Well, Bobby, you mentioned that, and if you look at, and we're going back into the politics side of what Colorado deals with, and while the group Pro Animal Future should be recognized for being just as lunatic as anybody else out there. When they came
I haven't even heard of these guys.
Yeah, look those bastards up.
Okay.
I mean, it'll sicken you.
Was it Pro Animal
Future.
Okay.
They're the ones who initiated the ordinances for this ballot initiative on 309, the slaughterhouse ban in the city of Denver, and 308, which was the fur ban. And I sat on the issues committee along with the Hands Off My Hat Denver campaign. But the fur ban included not just furs; it included cowboy hats, included fishing lures.
And it tells you everything right there.
Yeah, right there. I mean, it's so it includes cowboy hats, fishing lures, and Native American crafts. It would have banned essentially most of the things that happened in the National Western Stock Show. And if you listen to what they said in their interviews, it didn't have anything to do with animal welfare. They said, we want to alter the way people live, what they eat, and how they act on their daily basis, period, because they don't believe in any of it. Now, if you look at the statistics, I think 69% of the Denver city and county voters voted down the slaughterhouse deal, and 57% voted down the fur ban. But through our research, once you turn around and brought cowboy hats in, people went, wait a minute, cowboy hats? Well, that's made with beaver and rabbit fur felt. Once you brought in fishing lures, they said, well, wait a minute. I'd like to go fishing. My grandpa goes fishing. He ties flies. Once you turn around and brought in the Native American
Not to mention all the businesses, outfitters, fly shops, all that stuff derives right there.
Look at the ISC Sports Show. It had been banned.
God,
you turn around and look at the custom hat manufacturers. Look at Boot Barn. Any of this, you couldn't do any of that stuff. They don't care. And those mentalities come from Washington, Oregon, where they've over and over and over tried to get on the ballot to where no animal could be harmed. You couldn't kill a mouse. You couldn't raise honeybees. You couldn't ride a horse. You couldn't you couldn't do anything. And they've tried to take that message.
Well, guess what? You wouldn't get your loaf of bread.
No.
Because there's farmers that drive tractors over thousands.
Exactly.
Of mammals.
The way that, I mean, just look at we're giving them credit here, but it shows the lunacy of what they are and who they are and what they, this is who we're up against. Look it up there, 308 and 309, Election Day, Go TV for animal, or Go Vote for Animals, vote yes. Denver shot them down handily. But the city and county of Denver, actually, we gained like 13 or 14 percentage points off of the wolf deal that the city and county of Denver voted for back in 2020. We flipped 13 or 14 percentage points on that for Proposition 127 because of all this lunatic other crap that was out there, the stuff that they were having to deal with.
Yeah, I think that we've proven it that people are actually kind of waking up, to actually really look into things. I want to ask you a question and kind of dive off of these guys because fuck them. Sorry, I'm saying that publicly. I don't care.
But it just shows who we're up against.
Right. This is lunacy, man. These guys are. If you're just listening to this podcast, their whole campaign is spraying water hoses and throwing snowballs. It's kid shit, man. There's nothing scientifically based on animal.
It's not the adult table.
Yeah, there's
definitely, coming up to Thanksgiving, that's a good segue. Because
they're not sitting at the card table, dude.
They don't get they don't get the turkey table. They get the vegan turkey table.
But so because of this and these organizations that are out there like that, and I'm sure you've been asked this by a million other organizations that are pro-wildlife and pro-wildlife biology, but what do you think is the defining factor on us? I know that there's a ton of different factors, but on this ballot initiative not passing and us retaining the North American model of wildlife management for mountain lions.
I think and Cats Aren't Trophies has alluded to this, and I think that we did it first. Okay, so I'll mark it up as that. They always say what we say. They don't come up with anything new. We said that the wolf deal probably caused some consternation and reservations or buyer's remorse with some voters because wolves were in the news pretty much every day, especially since last December when we brought them in, but specifically since 2020 when Proposition 114 passed. So I strongly believe that people realized, wait a minute, why are we voting on this? And there's a long drawn out story if we've got time to
You got
give
plenty of time. You need another cup of coffee?
No, not yet.
Okay, let us know.
I might have to use the bathroom. I keep doing coffee, but I didn't.
You got to put some of that bulletproof in there.
I didn't want any of that.
They're a
stuff.
sponsor of ours, but yeah, go buy some. We got a great discount code, but
not when we're doing podcasts.
Yeah, no.
So I went to a Colorado Rockies game. And after that, I was invited to go to a couple bars up north of town and north of the ballpark down there. And because of our research and our development that we'd been creating and what we were trying to come up with, from a variety of different perspectives. And as I've said before, I'm the chair of the Colorado Wildlife Council, which is the messaging campaign to show the benefits of hunting and fishing. That's a paid-for program that hunters and anglers kick into $1.50 for every license that's purchased through Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Now, I can't advocate by statute and by bylaws of what we do on the council to turn around and go along with 127 or any ballot initiative or any piece of legislation. But when I went out and did my own research, drinking a few beers.
Damn, I want to go to happy hour with you, Dan. We got to start doing our podcast at night, 9 o'clock in the morning, dude.
Kidding.
All right.
But I started asking some women, and of course I looked like the old bearded pervert walking around with a bear claw. I'm like, can I talk to you and ask you some questions? And the first group of women that I hit said, if it has the politics, we don't know. I don't want to have it. And I said, I'm buying drinks. Oh, okay. Well, we're not drinking beer. We're drinking mixed drinks. I said, I don't care. Well, my conversation went from 5 young women to 25 young women. And I've memorized these statistics because I was taking notes on my little napkin, and I was trying not to act like the old bearded pervert that just came in here to talk to these beautiful girls. And they were all between 21 and 28 years old. And I talked to 25 of them total, but 2 of them actually helped. They were good wing girls, because once I got done with the first 5, then I said, well, I need to go talk to some other girls. And they said, well, we'll go with you.
This sounds kind of fun.
It was actually pretty cool. Yeah. And it was on a Saturday night, so you had tons of women that were coming into these bars, and they weren't looking. There was girls' night out. There were gaggles of them, and I don't know where they came from, but they were appealing enough in presentation that you felt like you needed to talk to them, because I knew that they looked like what we were claiming as part of our target audience. And so 21 of the 25 between 21 and 28 years old were registered to vote. The other ones were not. And so I didn't concentrate on those. It's not like I kicked them to the curb, but their statistics didn't matter because they weren't.
So this wasn't based on looks then.
Well,
sorry, I'm throwing jokes in there.
Initially
Keep going.
Initially it was.
Yeah.
And since we're on this podcast, I can give some humor into this. So when I said I want to ask some questions, the one little gal, she says I'm shaved.
Oh my goodness!
Well, it just caught me off guard, and I was like, "Oh, immediately
what do I
blush
say
and,
now?"
And start to sweat. And I said, "Well, that kind of caught me off guard." And she said, "But you're wondering, aren't you?" And I'm like, "Where am I at? Who am I?"
Yeah.
So I'm trying to move through the minutia of this.
So glad I'm out of the pool, dude. Yeah. That's all I got to say.
and so she was actually one of the gals that helped me get with the other gals to because I spent $246 that night on drinks for these women.
Right.
But my little napkins started getting full, and 19 of the 21 that were registered to vote all alluded to the fact that they were going. This was the 29th of September. They all said they were voting for Harris. 19 of the 21 said they were voting for Harris. And I thought, my survey just went out the window. And 2 of them said they were undecided. Nobody said Trump. Now, this is downtown Denver. In the core unit that we were really trying to concentrate on, in the city and county where the fur ban and the slaughterhouse ban was going to be voted on by not you and I, but those individual women. 16 of the 21 told me that they would vote no on 127.
Really?
They would vote no on 127. And the reason being is because as soon as you incorporated the fur hat, the fishing lure, and the Native American stuff, they said, don't screw with any of that. That's fearful to me about looking forward to where if the antis came back and said, we're just going to talk about fur.
Yeah, should we edit this part out?
They're going to figure this shit out anyway.
Yeah. Hopefully they've turned it off by now.
But if you look at the system of who is there, you're screwing with me. My ability to eat, my ability to fish, my ability to wear a cowboy hat, my ability to turn around and go to the powwow or the Native American craft show or the Indian market. You're taking that out.
Or to take my favorite purse out.
Yeah, exactly. And so all of these girls made between $60,000 and $150,000 a year. 9 of the 21 owned vehicles. The rest do not. The one gal told me, she said her rent was $2,500 a month and her car parking was $2,100 a month. So she got rid of the car, and she Ubers and rents a car or whatever when she needs to go skiing, or they all carpool.
I don't know how people live that life.
Well,
no offense, but yeah.
And so the interesting thing was that by the time that you got into the fur ban, all of them were for the fur ban until I threw in these other components. By the time you get through all of the other components, then 21 out of 21 came to our side of the fence saying, no. When you threw in Ordinance 309 on the slaughterhouse, and they said, I don't know, what does that entail? And I said, well, who here eats lamb chops? Well, like 18 of the 21 girls preferred lamb over beef or other things, and there must be some diet that they all adhere to, or that's more reasonable to that age bracket. But when I said Papados and Elway's and Shanahan's and the Buckhorn Exchange and all this fancy restaurants where you go get lamb, that they wouldn't be able to get lamb anymore because they would turn around and ban this, they just kind of looked like, why are they screwing with our food? And I said, exactly. Why are they screwing with the fishing? Why are they screwing with the food? Why are they screwing with the Native Americans? Why are they screwing with wildlife management? By the time that the whole thing was done and over with, even though they were still voting for Harris, they didn't want people screwing with them or anybody else and their ability to feed themselves or live their life like what they wanted to, period. And I think that's where the anti screwed up. And I don't know how you turn around and start carrying that message when those individuals were so solid.
Not to interrupt you, but I think that's kind of where I was getting at is like, screw the left, screw the right. Like in the middle, we should be controlling these situations that affect people on a day-to-day basis, let's get the extremism out of it and just focus on the facts.
Focus on the facts and let people make their own educated decisions on what is going to affect me. The girls who were in the medical profession, 2 of them were in surgical robotics. They just looked and they just laughed amongst themselves. And they're like, that'd be like turning around and us putting it on a ballot and saying, you have to do something this specific way. Well, who's going to make that determination? Science does. And They said over and over, why are we even allowed to vote on something like mountain lions? The science tells us that they're doing a good job, not the antis. Now, and I want to say, too, that the advertisements that those girls saw were somewhat off-putting because they felt like that they were being demeaned and belittled and admonished and shamed for doing something that they thought was right.
Really? Yeah,
that's a curiosity deal, too, because if you look at our stuff, we never attempted to do that. We said, hey, follow the science. On the Hands Off My Hat Denver campaign, we just talked about the facts. We didn't talk about you're a heathen bastard if you allowed this or supported this. We didn't try to belittle or degrade anybody, but the opposition did because why? That's what they do on a regular daily basis. Mm-hmm. That's their stick.
Yeah, if you go look at any of the commercials that they put out, and somehow they found us and put a commercial over our YouTube thing, which I had to go around. It's a whole nother story, but that commercial was horrible.
Yeah.
It was horrible. It was horrible for if you were a hunter or not. Nobody liked it. Mm-hmm. Nobody liked what was going on. So it's just pulling those heartstrings. It's emotions. They tried their tactic.
They tried to find what they thought was the key talking points. And, if they sit and listen to this, they're going to question this and they're going to. But the fact of the matter is they lost. They lost handily. They lost from the beginning to the end.
It wasn't a close.
We beat them in October of last year. We beat them in November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June. The only time that we didn't was in July when they gathered the signatures, and the only reason that they gathered the signatures, as I told you before, was because Governor Polis compromised on 2 oil and gas ballot initiatives, and when they were getting circulated signatures on their own at $20 apiece, when Polis negotiated on those, and there was going to be a $30 to a $50 million surplus of excise tax that went into Colorado Parks and Wildlife, the oil and gas industry didn't need circulators for signatures any longer, and the circulator company didn't have a client, so they went to Cat's Art Trophies and said, hey, we need a client. We'll do it for $4. They were not going to get the signatures ahead of time. And if you look at what they did on the signature gathering process, and this is another victory on our side, they gathered 188,000. Only 140 some odd thousand were certifiable.
I have a question. I think I've asked you this before, and I don't know if we talked about it on mic or not, but were those signatures, they had to be gathered in Colorado, the 188,000?
Yeah, there were 188,000. They have to be registered voters in the state of Colorado, which 48,000 of them
which
proved
is
not
shocking to me. I live in one of the most blue cities, short of Denver or Boulder, right here, where the podcast studio is at, and I didn't run into one person trying to get a signature for me. And I got 3 kids and a wife. She didn't. They go to the grocery store twice a day sometimes.
They were concentrating on places that by mass volume of people. We had them. We had people take pictures. They were standing outside of Cabela's and Bass Pro to get signatures.
That's a wrong place to go.
But they got signatures.
Did they really?
Yeah,
wow.
And it's because the average person would walk out and they say, do you want to help us save cats? Sure. I'll save cats.
Oh yeah, just not telling the whole story.
We have videos. We have videos of some of the sales pitches that the.
If somebody asked me that, I would say, yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to stop the cruel and inhumane treatment of cats? Yes. Put my name down. Sure. Do you want to stop world hunger? Sure. Okay, put it down there. Or you just turn around and put your shit on there so you can walk away and get out of there as fast as you can because you don't want to stand there and listen to the guy's BS.
Right.
But consider that the signature gatherers, the circulators themselves, more often than not, had 5 or 6 of those things. Here, sign this one. I've got a sucker here. Sign this one. This one has to do with LGBTQ. This one has to do with abortion. This one has to do with oil and gas. This one has to do with wildlife. Get them while they're hot. What's this one pertain to? This is only for the city and county of Denver. Oh, I don't live there. Okay, don't sign that, but sign this.
How is this even still a system?
It's a screwed up system. It's a screwed up system. Why should somebody in Denver be able to get signatures from as many people as they possibly can? And in theory, we don't have to worry about Gunnison or Huerfano County or Canyon City or Moffett County. We can stay in Denver and we can turn around and get whatever we want. Now, some of those people spread out thinking they could capitalize, but they're not forced to. There needs to be a revision of the system to make sure it's more equitable and that there's something that we could turn around and try to make it to where no matter what the issue is, everybody in the state of Colorado gets a chance to voice their opinion on it to see if they want it on the ballot or not. Prime example of where we're at. They got their signatures. We won 58 out of 64 counties. The final percentage was 55 to 45%. If you didn't get signatures from all around the state in equal numbers to what you did for the Front Range, the system worked by saying, we don't care if it's on the ballot or not. We don't want to turn around and support that.
Well, here's the real issue, too. I think it should be done on land mass. Like, they should have to go to the counties where people are affected firsthand by because that's a huge problem.
And there might become something down the road, depending on if you have to do it statutorily or constitutional amendment-wise. There's things that could be more complementary to the process, such as maybe gathering 2% of the signatures from each one of the 35 Senate districts. Okay, that would be a start. Kind of raise the bar. But then you could also turn around and say, for all statutory things, that the threshold of 55% that is on the constitutional amendment, the statutory side would have to mirror those requirements or that criteria.
It's almost like it should be, instead of a state initiative, and I know that mountain lions are across the state, but it should be done county by county almost.
Now,
is that's what you're saying, or is
no?
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
To where you have full equitable representation, instead of allowing everybody to stand in front of Whole Foods in downtown Denver to get signatures, if they had to get 124,238 signatures, those signatures would have to be divided up equally between each one of the 35 Senate
Yeah,
districts
that
to
makes
be able
sense.
to get it. That way, if you only got 1% or 0% out of Huerfano County or Fremont County, doesn't qualify.
Right.
You don't get it. You have to turn around and get it. Like San Miguel County, if you look at that, I mean, there's a very minimal amount of people that live in San Miguel County. But for the total number of what you'd have to get for the total signatures, 2% would have to come from each Senate district. Now, the difference is, from our understanding, the legislature would not want to undertake something along that line because then they would possibly be taking the voters' rights away from the voter to be able to do so. We don't think that the legislature is the right place to do wildlife management. We think the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission and the staff recommendation is the right place to do it. But I would much rather deal with the legislature than have to deal with 5.9 million people and 4.4 million registered voters. That in itself seems like a skewed manner in the way to be able to turn around and manage our wildlife resources or our water resources or our mining resources or the agriculture, everything.
Yeah.
I don't want any one of those girls that I interviewed that I bought drinks for making decisions on things that they're never going to see, never have to interact with, and never have to make a decision on except for checking that little box and calling it done.
That's a great point.
I don't want any of them.
Yeah.
But the commercials that we ran post-election where we turn around and thank those people, we acknowledge the fact that the system that we have
That's
right
unheard of too, man. I want to commend you guys on doing that because it's so cool. And like everything that I've done here, I don't expect anything in return. But just to hear that little commercial or something like that, it makes me feel good. It's a warm and fuzzy, man.
Yeah.
It makes you feel good.
And we did billboards too.
That's awesome.
Digital billboards.
Yeah. A lot of times in the past, no matter what side of the fence you're on an initiative, like I was telling you, and dealing with the wolf thing in the past, all these organizations on both sides of the fence just disappear.
Oh, yeah.
Gone.
We're not going anywhere.
Where'd the rest of the funding go? I mean, you guys are proving what you're doing with it. You're putting your money where your mouth is at. And standing behind it.
And cats aren't trophies. I mean, our issues committee, Colorado Wildlife Deserve Better, was flat flipping broke when this thing's done and over with. We paid our bills and we're done. Cats aren't trophies. They're not broke. They had $187 some odd $1,000 that was left over that they didn't spend on the campaign.
Which is that public record if it's a 5-0?
Well, any of the issues committee stuff is, and any of the other stuff is if you look through the IRS or the 990s. But the issues committee stuff, you can do that almost on a weekly or a monthly basis through the entire campaign.
Wow.
So we knew what they made. They knew what we made, what we were doing. But, you look at the grassroots, boots on the ground stuff that we did and how the community came out. You saw the signs. Yeah. You saw the tailgate wraps.
Well, not only, outside of the state. And then, a shout out to anybody that put this on their platform or any organizations that stepped up to the plate and took a stand in this, because I think that that's really what persuaded a lot of outside people and that grassroots thing of you going out and pounding 80 podcasts. I mean, that was just a small portion.
13
then
states.
Then you got the public engagement, right? All the public events that you were at. I mean, me and you personally, Dan, 16, 17, 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
I've talked to you at 5 o'clock in the morning and I've talked to you at 9 o'clock at night, dude. And it's nonstop, and I think that you guys caring about that so much, and then everybody else jumping on board to support you, anybody that genuinely did support you. I think Cam put out a reel maybe 3 weeks ago or something.
Yeah, he was on another podcast and did that.
That was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
What he said on there, I can't remember exactly what he said, but it's basically look at the organizations that you're supporting, and if they didn't take a stand in this, pretty much write them off because they don't care about wildlife or what.
They're not prepared for the fight.
Yeah.
Whether it's a business or whether it's an organization or whether it's an entity, if their model doesn't support fighting, then is that really who you want to support? Now, we are partners with a tremendous amount of organizations through a collaborative process through the Colorado Wildlife Conservation Project. We meet once a week. But not all of them were capable, monetarily or otherwise, to contribute. The ones that did, that couldn't do it monetarily, put out calls to action, put out things to their membership, tried to spread the word. The conversations that you saw that happened behind the scenes that actually came to fruition, like Cabela's and Bass Pro, they didn't kick any money into this thing, but they turned around and did a great big call to action out to everybody that buys anything from Cabela's or Bass Pro. And you knew exactly where they stood for, and they came out and said, vote no on 127 and support our partner organizations. That's a big thing when you start looking at exposure and saturation.
It's almost worth more than money because that's what you're after with the money anyways,
exactly,
right? Yeah,
exactly. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, they kicked money in, and they also turned around and did a call to action. You look at the Wild Sheep Foundation, kicked money in, did a call to action. Muley Fanatics, kicked money in, did a call to action. Rocky Mountain Bighorn Society, Safari Club International. I could go down the list over and over and over, and I'm going to miss somebody.
That has
and leave
nothing to
out.
do with cat hunting at all.
No.
Those organizations.
No.
By the way.
You know, and so 12,000 some odd individual contributions that we took in. Some of those were big, some of those were small, some of them were on the website, some were through the credit card process, some were raffles and donations and stuff that people did. Some were...
Dude, some of the raffles you guys had was badass.
I know, we did a pretty good job.
Yeah,
didn't we?
that was awesome.
But look at, there again, you look at the buy-in.
The
look
companies that stepped up, like Iron Will.
Yeah,
and those
Swarovski,
guys, yeah.
Slide a Gun Shop, Swarovski and Vortex. And you look at the Whitaker Brothers Outfitting. I just talked to Josh and Jason yesterday, and everybody saw that this was a need to support and elevate the science-based management side of it. If we lost lion hunting and bobcat harvesting in the state of Colorado, do you think the antis are going to be satisfied with that?
No, they're just going to go to the next thing.
So what's on the next on the list? Is it fur bears, or do they go back to bears? Do they turn around and try to do something with bighorn sheep, mountain goats, and moose? And I'll mention, if you look at the emails that Cats Aren't Trophies sent to their membership through this entire latter part of the process, they started calling out the bighorn sheep trophy hunters, the mountain goat trophy hunters. They laid their game plan out.
I want to give a shout out to Robbie Kroger too, man, at Blood Origins, because I think his approach is really what he's doing in his tactics. He's such a unique guy. You know, we had him in here, and thanks to you for helping tee that up, you know, and him for all of his support and the timing of Lionheart and that film and what the light that it shed.
Theater and
incredible,
all that.
Man. It's so cool. But just his approach to kind of educate the public, and also from a technological standpoint, I think is so needed, right? Because we all turn around and Google stuff now, right? We all do that. And to get trophy hunting kind of out of the verbiage, or like if you Google trophy hunting, you know, we did it on the podcast with him, what comes up in those first images and that sort of thing. It's just, nobody likes to see it. Like I said, hunters, non-hunters, animal rights activists, people that work at slaughterhouses that kill animals every day for a living. Nobody wants to see what's going on there.
Right.
But that's how it's labeled. So that verbiage being labeled on all of hunting is the worst possible face you could have for hunting. And we say that on here all the time. And I wish there was a way to just take it out of our vocabulary so it wasn't.
Well, it needs to be codified to some degree, because what is trophy hunting? And, you know, while the antis bastardize it, they can't say hunting without saying trophy hunting. They can't. They've never said on this campaign hunting in any way, shape, or form. It's always trophy hunting, because they create this vision and this image of what they're trying to convey to the unknowing general public.
Yeah, it's not subsistence hunting or...
No, they don't say...
management
They
hunting.
don't say, well, we have hunters and then we have trophy hunters. No, they say we have trophy hunters, period. So whether you hunt rabbits with a beagle, you're the Antichrist. Whether you want to turn around and use falcons to go kill rabbits, you're the Antichrist. Whether you want to turn around and hunt a doe deer for subsistence because you want to harvest it with a bow out of a tree stand or next to a water hole, you're the Antichrist. That's what they look at, because every single thing that they have is trophy hunting, trophy hunting, trophy hunting. And they don't say trapping, they say commercial trapping. We don't have commercial trapping. Just because you could turn around and harvest something and then sell it, which under the North American model of wildlife conservation is fully legal and ethical based upon the fur-bearing side of it, because it says to have a legitimate use, and there are markets for fur. There's not markets for game meat. There's markets for fur.
Right.
They want to turn around and continually imprint this impression of what they want to get their point across, because we're all trophy hunters. Doesn't matter what it is. We talked about this before when I was in your presence, that my wife killed a doe deer back in 1985 or 86. That damn head is on the wall at the house because that's the deer that she killed, and she's killed 2 bucks since then.
No antlers on it.
No antlers, but that's on the wall. But that's a trophy. So if you listen to the opposition, we're all bad because we take a picture, because we salvage parts and pieces, because we turn around and want to have a 3-dimensional memory. They think the taxidermy business, the tanning business, the predator calling business, do you think that they really support 100% Cabela's and Bass Pro?
Absolutely
or Shields?
not.
They probably go to Shields and buy all their stuff, but they won't go upstairs because that's the trophy hunting area.
Right.
It's not the hunting area. We just need to turn around and figure out a way to change the language that they've tried to bastardize.
Well, I think what's really done a good part of this and is listening to real people. I think podcasting is one of the best things that I've ever done, man. That's why that's why I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm sitting here with you. Because you can sit down there's no time limits. There's no sound bites. There's no agenda in here. I mean, some podcasts might have an agenda or a structured deal, but I think for the most part, it's the ones that resonate the most, like your Joe Rogans.
Oh, yeah.
Your Cameron Haynes, like those people sharing their experiences and also being conscious enough to share it in the right way, but also not worry about what other people think. It's an outside perspective, right? It's where somebody can be educated in hunting and they don't have to pick up a bow. They don't have to pick up a gun. They don't even have to step foot. They can be driving their car, sipping Starbucks coffee or whatever, and be getting the same experience or hearing somebody's perspective on their experience of being in the backcountry on top of a mountain.
I think it's relatable too, because if they listen, they have enough of an interest to listen longer or further and see what those different perspectives are, or to use the analogies of what some people bring out, whether it's Joe Rogan or whether it's Cameron Haynes or Clay Newcomb or whomever else. But trying to get that point across to talk to individuals is a long, drawn-out process. You and I can talk to millions of people if this is our platform.
Well, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but like people don't want to be engaged in conversation nowadays.
They just want to listen.
It's a big part of it. I mean, that's one reason why I enjoy podcasting so much is because how often do you go into a soundproof room, put on headphones so you can hear each other even better with hearing loss, and then be expected to shelf your cell phone, not worry about what's going. I mean, we're in a dark room. I mean, Jeremy's here and he's expected to sit there and be quiet, which happens most of the time.
You can talk.
Yeah. I love Jeremy. Go listen to his podcast. Yeah.
I'm gonna step on you guys.
No, it's good, man. But to have that connection with humans is so lost. It's so lost, and I think that's why people will listen to it, but they don't want to turn around and engage in it. And I see a decline in people that I meet that might be fans of the podcast, and this is no disrespect. Very few of them can sit there and have a conversation with me.
Oh, yeah.
They get shy. They get, they just are uneasy, right? And then if you're in a public setting, like, for example, after this last election, which was at the beginning of this month, and everything pretty much won by a landslide that I voted on for the most part, and people that I had no idea or that I see in my day-to-day life were expressing their political values to me now because it was the popular thing to do. I think so many people are worried about being shut down or how they'll be judged or how they'll be viewed to voice their opinion. So, man, how much do you think podcasting helped?
Oh, it's tremendous. I mean, if which is funny because
in this last election process,
I wish I had it available to me. But some of the bantering back and forth with some of the social forums from the opposition that I don't follow them, but that people would send it to me, and I'd look and go, well, okay, that's the same crap they've been spewing for the last 10 years. Now they just elevated it. But what I would see was well, yeah, but Dan Gates had access to 1,000 podcasts, and he did 1,000 podcasts. And I'm like, okay, well, at that point, I did 74, and that's not close to 1,000. So their numbers are skewed again.
Yeah.
But when they said, well, if we had somebody like that, what he had, and I'm thinking, you did.
I publicly invited them
Well, yeah,
on
but
the podcast.
they had Joe Rogan on their side for years and years because of his political views. They had somebody like that on a national perspective.
Yeah.
But he came from the dark side to the right side and gave the perspectives of people that didn't appear to be lunatics, that came out that was more holistic and organic in the originations of it.
Open-minded, man.
Well, yeah, and so there was a comment that was made that about somebody didn't want to watch an animal die. It's appalling. I just don't want to see anything die. I said, well, no, 99% of the people are like that. Even hunters, they want to harvest, but they don't want to watch the killing process.
Nobody wants to see a deer get hit by a Tesla and be crippled, dragging itself
or to turn
across
around
the highway.
or to turn around and have one or two arrows in it and trying to drag its body across because a guy made a bad shot. Nobody likes that stuff.
That's the worst feeling as a hunter, by the way.
I mean, and I do everything in my power to make sure that visual component isn't part of my daily life. But that same person that's criticizing me that they don't want to see death in any way, shape, or form, I find out that they're pro-abortion. And I said, well, do you ever want to watch one? And they said no. And I said, well, everybody's the same way on wildlife, too. They know that
that's a great analogy, man.
Nobody wants to see something die, even though we might vote to say that this is acceptable or that's not acceptable. Whether it's hunting or whether it's abortion or whatever. I mean, look, the comparable analysis and the analogies that we give are from boots on the ground experience. I doubt that very many people who don't hunt have actually been somewhere to where they watched an animal die in any way, shape, or form. I said this I think it was on Clay Newcomb's Bear Grease podcast, which is remarkable. I mean,
shout out to those guys too, man. Everybody's awesome. Everybody in the community. That's what I was getting at when I was giving the shout outs.
Yeah, I mean, I went down there twice to Bentonville, Arkansas, West Fork, Arkansas, and they're just such nice, pleasant guys and just accommodating as hell. And they said, hey, if you want, we'd like you to come down again. And so there again, you asked if the podcast helped. Not only did it help, I think it brought the awareness and the attention to a wide variety of individuals, whether they hunt or whether they don't. Not everybody that follows Ranella is a hunter.
I got a theory, too, on podcasts. It's a truth serum. Because you and I can't sit here and have this conversation, me ask you questions and you volley questions back to me without being genuine or authentic.
Yeah.
Because it's going to shine right through. I mean, people can read through that in a heartbeat.
And the podcast gives you time to reflect and go back on what you heard in a conversation to do your own fact finding.
It's archived.
Yeah, and you could do a little bit of research on your own. It's so freaking weird.
And
to
the
me.
best thing too is on a podcast you can be wrong and be called out. I've had perspectives changed, because of one thing that I've said just in conversation. Big dumb guy thinking out loud, and boy, some of the messages that I get, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll change my perspective on that, and I can publicly do it.
And I've had people reach out to me. Not that I'm doing podcasts, which might change down the road. We'll see.
Let's go. We need the Dan Gates Daily, dude, or something.
The gates of hell.
Let's go. We could play some Slayer or AC/DC at the beginning of it. Let's go. Now you're talking my love language, rock and roll.
So, well, people would freak out with that with me. They're used to Marty Robbins and Waylon Jennings.
Right. That's cool too, man. Hey, outlaw country is where it's at, I think.
But I've had people reach out that criticized or scrutinized what I might have said. And the times that it's happened over the last 14 months, it's funny because then I think, well, maybe I did misspeak. And I'll look at it and I'll go back and I find out their source is from the lunatic bastards on the other side that they're believing the misinformation.
Or maybe they chopped it up to sound like something that's completely. I mean, that still happens.
Oh yeah. And so I would look at it and then I would email and respond back. One of the biggest issues that we ran into with this podcast sector or syndrome that we got into, And it was mind-boggling, but I really saw it post-election. November 5th to November 6th to even present day. For about 2.5 days in there, we took over 3,000 individual direct messages, over 3,000 individual messages off of the website. I can't tell you how many voicemails that I had, but by the first weekend there, after the 5th of November, I had over 300 unanswered voicemails on my message machine on the phone, and the ones that I could talk to were most of them were congratulatory, obligatory, complimentary type stuff. But some of them wanted to ask questions: how, when, why, what, where, and we tried to make sure that we could feed some information back to those individuals because they took their time to research and follow us. Maybe they contributed. Maybe they're turning around and just trying to say, hey, I was part of this, and boy, you guys did badass. But you know how hard it is in our little world to communicate?
You know how much I got right here?
Yeah.
I was like drinking from the fire hose,
Yeah.
man. So I can only imagine what you did. And being on 80 different platforms.
Oh.
I'm just one.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big one. I'm not, you were on some big
stuff,
platforms.
and to see the stuff come in. By the 7th of November, I bet I had 1,500, 2,000 text messages that came in from all around
Dude,
the country.
I feel honored right now. You really are my friend, aren't you?
It was remarkable because they just came out like they were part of it, and they were in the fundraising or the messaging or the outreach. And that's one of the reasons.
That's what I was trying to explain to you, whether it was voting for Trump or voting for this or voting for that or whatever. Mm-hmm. Just come out of the woodwork. Like, everybody loves a victory.
Everybody loves a victory. And because Colorado was so specific with Ordinance 308 and 309 that only the city and county of Denver could vote for.
Yeah.
But the city and county of Denver played a major role in what we could accomplish on Proposition 127. Now, we lost Boulder and we lost Denver, but the people that were there that switched from the wolf perspective to come over to our side because of what was going on
That's
with
the
ordinance.
tipping point right there. Yeah.
I mean, have you looked at the map on the Secretary of State's website?
Let's pull that up, Jeremy.
If you look at the Secretary of State's website about election results,
You know what scared me is the first night there was a ton of people posting platforms, hunters that we've talked to and stuff like that. We won. And I was like, pump the brakes here for a minute.
Yeah.
Like, this shit ain't over. Like, Denver's only counted 20% of their votes.
Exactly. And
and I was like,
we kept saying.
Yeah.
Well, that's 23, 24, 20. No, you need to go try November 5th.
Oh, got it.
Would Google match? Probably not.
Okay, so that
It's not the map, though.
Just Google the map.
that one there might be it.
Are they still counting ballots at this point?
Oh, I don't know. They probably found some in a box somewhere in some Walmart parking lot. That's the thing that pisses me off too. Is if you look at the process that we have,
The process is so screwy, and
for this county.
for us to be a state that doesn't require identification is another thing that really upsets me. But
Yeah, you'll probably have.
we live in one of the only blue states in
Well,
the
it's-
entire country right
I know,
now.
but, and that's what I wanted to show is we live in a blue state.
Go
If you-
just Google election results on
Prop-
Google, and it'll show you the map. Are you looking for the overall map on
just
counties?
the county map where you got 6 green counties and the rest are red.
Right?
And
I see.
Yeah. Just maybe type in map or something.
Because it's worth looking at.
Oh,
when,
yeah,
when the
it's
opposition
shocking.
turns around and says this was a close election, this was not a mandate, and I'm like, really? How the hell was that? No, that's not it.
Come on, Jeremy.
Well, keep hunting.
Yeah.
We'll circle back to it. Definitely raise your hand when you find it, Jeremy.
Because if you look at what Colorado voters voted for, we won Jefferson County, we won Arapahoe County or Adams County. We narrowly lost Arapahoe County. We won Larimer County. We won El Paso County. Things that were all wolf.
Yeah.
And we won handily on this particular deal to the point to where when anybody says that was close, kiss my ass.
No, it was
If
not even close.
If 55 to 45 is close, then what the hell was Trump to Harris? Because
Yeah.
it wasn't near 55 to 45. It was like 50.1
that
to 40.
was shocking to me, to be blatantly honest. I mean,
Yeah,
I
there
was
you go.
shocked.
Try maybe that. Yeah. Now, yeah. Okay. So that says 95% of the votes, but it's 54 to 45%.
Which is considered a landslide.
Ads.
Exactly. Unless you're an anti that you want to turn around and try to revise the statistics, and then you got to sign up for this.
Go ahead and put your email address in there, Jeremy, so we can see that map again.
Yeah. but it's funny because the way, let's see, that one there is
No, that's the electoral.
that's the
presidential now.
presidential.
I know if you go to Google real quick, and then just put in election results Colorado, and then it'll give you another tab to ballot measures maybe. Like, go back to the top. Go to the top, click ballot measures.
Yep.
Does it give you a new map? Oh, it just gives you each initiative individually. Maybe click on 127, go show more. Maybe it'll bring up a map. Come on,
there you
Google.
go.
Let's see what. It's just giving you
Just
percentage.
giving you percent. Yeah, but
Yeah,
It's
but
50.
still,
You saw
look at
that
that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
I mean, if you look at the crayon box of what we become accustomed to in Colorado, everybody says, "Oh, Colorado's screwed. It's blue. It's blue. It's blue." No, it's not. This is a proof that it's not.
Right.
Sectors are blue.
very, very small sectors by landmass are blue.
Yeah.
It's just dense population.
It's just dense populations. And to our point about an earlier part of the conversation, if there's a way to subjectively take into consideration people's perspectives, but without bastardizing the other people that are going to be adversely affected on this, just as, and I say this tongue in cheek, if we get to a point to where everybody says, okay, we're going to ban snowplows, except for on the Front Range, because there's more people that need more snowplows there than there are any other place. So any place that doesn't have a need, or where the Front Range people don't go, like ski areas and stuff, we're just going to ban snowplows. State snowplows no longer exist. Okay, so who do you think would win that? The Front Range. Do I want snowplows? I don't care whether they get snowplows or not, unless it just takes me to Keystone or Vail or Copper Mountain or wherever.
Right.
Then I want snowplows there. But if it goes to Fremont County, no, that's a red county. I don't want that. They kill mountain lions. I don't want snowplows there. I mean, stop and think of the lunacy of that.
Right.
So,
Yeah, that's Jeffco right there.
yeah, look at that.
That's wild. That's cool. It's broken down by county. I mean,
54 to 45 in Jeffco.
well, I can say that we singly had a little bit of a hand in that.
A major one. I mean, come on. If we want this fair and equitable, this is good for us. But when it's not, it's not.
Right.
But they're bitching about that it's not good for them. So let's make it more equitable straight across the board. Let's go by counties.
Mm-hmm.
You have to win the majority of the counties. Well, we proved that we won the majority of the counties now, and we won the majority of the counties then. Okay? If Denver and Boulder are going to be the underlying elements of how we win or lose ballot initiatives in the state of Colorado, I don't want to play in that system.
Well,
I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, especially if you look at the population numbers of mountain lions that are in Denver or Boulder.
Well, exactly. Or the people are going to have to deal with them.
Yeah.
You know, now if you start talking about conflict resolution, well, they're probably going to have more overall on the Front Range, and we're going to see that through this East Slope Mountain Lion Management Plan.
There's more people there.
Yeah, I mean, there's less tolerance.
Yeah. There's less habitat.
I was it last week or the week before, they had a mountain lion out there in Greeley at some school, you know, in Greeley.
So I don't know if, Jeremy, see if you can pull this up. I want to make sure this is right. Somebody on whatever the Facebook post is, you might have to look this up from your phone too, but, you know, everybody's got these Ring cameras now.
Oh, yeah.
They caught a mountain lion at their front door at like 9:15 at night, right here in Evergreen.
Yep. Did you see the ones that we used in our advertisements about eating a cat?
No.
And where they were, I'm trying to see if I got I'm not being rude.
No, you're not at all.
There's there's a chance for education, and there's a chance for distribution of information, which in turn comes to education. It's just that what do people want to be educated about? Do they want to be educated about the facts, or do they want to turn around and be educated about their perception of what they've been taught to believe? If we were taught that we could do everything that we wanted to and we didn't need cars, and we did that over a 50 or 60-year period, nobody would be driving cars. But we can't, and we won't. But if you say it enough and get enough people to believe it, and the narrative is there, just like we keep talking about climate change. Do I think climate change is happening? You bet your ass. Do I think that you and I caused it? Hell no. Do I think it's been happening for the last 275 million years since the Ice Age? Yeah, I do. Do I think it's going to continually get worse? Maybe it will. Are we going to be on the planet? I have no idea, but I'm not going to be here one way or the other when it's done and over with.
Right.
We're looking at things at such a blink of an eye, and when it comes into the whole scope of how long the Earth has been here. So whatever's happened in the last 125 years, I just did it right there with a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
That's what it was. And we're going to judge our daily lives on everything that we do from every component of life based upon the blink of an eye.
Well, and to bring it back
you blinked like 7 times, so that's
my God.
85 million years.
Believe me, it takes me that long to come up with what I'm trying to say next. To take it back to wildlife management, I think that it has this major ripple effect that you don't see until you're 20, 30, 40, 50 years down the road, right? Like we won't really know the impact of wolves, even though that was on the ballot 4 years ago,
Boy,
right?
I have something for that.
But I mean the major effects of it until we're 10, 15, 20 years down the road, we might see
1996, the Constitutional Amendment, Amendment 14, to ban the harvesting of any species with foothold traps, body gripping devices, and cable restraint devices. It altered my ability to make a living the way I was making a living before. But I modified and I adapted, as did the entire conflict resolution industry. Today, I walk into people's houses, their businesses, military installations, infrastructure, utility infrastructures, agricultural facilities, and I say, well, this is the method of take we have to deal with. This is the option that we have. Well, why can't you just do this? Well, because in 1996, voters voted to ban the utilization of these tools in the toolbox. More often than not, the people that I'm trying to educate that now want me to solve the problem admit to the fact that I think I voted for that back in 96. But the kicker is they were 23 years old or 28 years old. They didn't have a house. They didn't have to worry about squirrels in their attic because the landlord was going to take care of it. They didn't have trees that they had to worry about because they didn't have a yard. They didn't live the life that they live now. And now they're looking at going, I think I did that. I don't want to do that crap again because now my kids are going to have to turn around and live with that 30 years or 40 years from now.
Yeah.
That's
what I'm worried about as a voter. It's honestly not even. It's what I think is best for the future of my children.
Mm-hmm.
Straight up.
But the future of your children. But in the same context, in the meantime, to not have your dog get eaten by a mountain lion, or not have a squirrel burn your house down because he ate the wires out of it, or not having a pack rat in your motorhome that ate all the wires out that you turn around and cost you $300,000 to I'm in this business.
Right.
I know what people have been going through for the last 30 some odd years since we banned the utilization of those tools
on small animals.
Yeah. With urban-rural divide and urban sprawl, and the way that things have. Look, we've had wildlife problems since the beginning of time. I don't know statistically. I've never seen any petroglyphs drawn with a caveman.
Well, I think they've gotten way better.
you know,
Could you imagine a short-faced bear coming after you or something? I mean, there's no chance, and no cover, no Tesla to go run to and zip off.
Jokingly, can you imagine the Geico caveman sitting there, trying to figure out how to get the exterminator to come and get rid of the woolly mammoth to stop this kid?
Right?
We as society, at all levels, and whether they want to admit it or not, I know that they believe this. We have our level of tolerance. Everybody. Do you want cockroaches in your house?
Absolutely
if you don't,
not.
You modify or adapt, or you turn around and prevent, or you exclude, or you kill. You want mice in your cupboard? I don't know anybody that does, even though we go to a lot of houses that they have that, and I'll get a cat. Well, you do whatever the hell you want, but in the meantime, the mouse is eating your food and he's peeing on your toaster. Everybody has a level of tolerance. Maybe it's a wolf to a livestock producer. Maybe it's an owl to a chicken producer. Maybe it's somebody that lost 3 cats to a bird of prey. Everybody has a level of tolerance. They might be able to say that they've got a sacrificial lamb, but I guarantee they don't want it to be their kid or their wife or their dog that sleeps with them that they've had for 9 years. Everybody has a level of tolerance. We just have to figure out how we do what we need to do from a human perspective, from a wildlife perspective, and making sure that we still have wildlife management in perpetuity.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. So I guess leading into this, because we're an hour and a half in, and one of my questions was,
when's pizza coming?
Yeah, let's go get some food after this if you got time.
Yeah,
man.
that's fine.
Jeremy owns a great restaurant right here in town.
You
so,
do?
Yeah.
Well, what the hell are you doing?
Are they going to be open today? He's my buddy. He's my ride or die. So, I guess moving forward, and I know that this is probably a huge question for you, and maybe you don't know. Maybe you guys, I'm sure, are still trying to figure it out. I mean, we're only
2.5 weeks.
Yeah, 2.5 weeks away from the results and the victory. What's next? What can? Because there's so many people and so much momentum behind this, and I've even seen it in this 2 weeks. Just it dwindles off, right? It's radio silence a little bit on it.
Yeah.
That's one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on. And I know that you're still out there doing what Dan Gates does and just kicking ass and taking names. How, on an individual basis, how can people still help you in the next mission?
Well, it's a good question. I consider it to be part of the finalization of the roadmap of the playbook, but it's going to be multiple chapters,
right?
Over and over.
It's been proven to be that, right?
Yeah,
you've been dealing with this same situation for how many years now?
Well, I mean, since I started playing in 2007, but specifically since our
That's
major
wild.
victories.
That's almost 20 years.
Yeah, and the average guy's like, "Well, when did this start?" or the gal on the commission
You've just
meeting.
gotten a bigger platform, more eyes, more people.
On our Instagram page, we were up to the point to where right at Election Day, 2.5 million views in a 30-day period. That's a lot.
Freaking a lot.
It's down to 1.3 now.
Right.
We lost 1.2 million views, because it's not sensationalism. It's not catastrophic.
It's not in their face.
Yeah,
right?
the asteroid's not going to hit anymore, so we don't have to worry about it.
Well, that's just it. That's kind of what I was getting at. Is that this is still looming? It's always going to be
still looming if anybody pays attention to it. Mm-hmm. Look at the Cats Aren't Trophies page. See what they're doing. I mean, those lunatic bastards are still going right back to the commission. They want to turn around and do legislative. We've already kicked their ass at all those levels, but they think that 1.3 million voters that voted for this is a mandate, and they've said this. This was not a loss. This was a mandate for you to act upon their wishes and desires. What about talking about the Wolf deal, 50.9%, and they constantly kept saying, the people have spoken.
Yeah, that should have been a draw decision at that point.
Yeah,
and
so
let's pump the brakes and we'll revisit it.
Yeah, but we win by 55 to 45, and it's like, oh, no, that doesn't really count. That doesn't make any difference. It's because the narrative and tone that they want to carry to try to get their point across, and they will stop. They will not stop. They are relentless. They will not stop at anything because they believe that the majority of the people think like them. And I think, based upon the wolf issue and based upon the lion issue, that if they want to come back to the well and we turn around and beat them back, I think we turn around and go after them personally and politically. Now, that might happen by the natural cycle of attrition anyway. You can't just keep wasting time and money and effort.
So much money.
Well, you look at this thing here, collectively, in totality, between 3 different campaigns, 2 against, 1 for, roughly $8 million was captured and spent on this. Think of what $8 million would have actually done for Mountain Lion Management to do better than what we've been doing, even though we've been doing a phenomenal job since 1965.
Yeah.
It's up to us as sportsmen and women and concerned parties, interested parties that are non-hunters, not anti-hunters, but non-hunters, to say enough is enough. When are we going to turn around and stop wasting our time and message?
How much does Colorado Parks and Wildlife spend on employment of biologists. I mean, that could have employed
Millions of dollars.
another 100 people probably.
Yeah. I mean, you stop and think about what Colorado
With
Parks
trucks and everything that they need to do their job.
retirement and their
Yeah.
and their medical plans and their vacation plans and just the ancillary components of being able to put
God.
somebody to work.
It feels like we just put $8 million into multiple dumpsters and lit them on fire a little bit.
Pretty much. But they opted to do it, and we were forced to turn around and do
Right.
it. And what I don't want to see is, I knew some of these things that had happened in the past. In 2020, there was 116 ballot initiatives in the United States. There's 26 states that have the ballot initiative process. There was 116 ballot initiatives in the United States. This year, 2024, there was 146. So they increased by 40. Colorado had 10% of those. Now, stop and think.
That's insane.
Colorado had 10%. We had 7 statutory and 7 constitutional amendments, ballot-driven initiatives, 10% of the entire country, but only 26 states participate in the ballot initiative process. We were far above the national average because extremist groups from a variety of different perspectives go, this looks like something. You want to stop Bobby Marshall from having a podcast? Let's do a ballot initiative. That's how stupid it is.
Yeah.
We could turn around and do a ballot initiative. I say this tongue-in-cheek. You don't want white people to walk their pit bulls after dark in downtown Denver. Let's do a ballot initiative. That's a lunatic statement, but that's how easy it is that if you can get through the process and your title is right, and you can get through the title board and you can get the signatures because other people don't like white people walking in their pit bulls.
To me, or rural hunters, though, the Mountain Lion Initiative was just as lunacy.
Yeah.
It's pure lunacy to think that, and looking at the facts, that what the opposition was stating was factual.
Look at the excise tax. That was a referred measure by the General Assembly. It was not fought by the National Shooting and Sports Foundation, the National Rifle Association, the Rocky Mountain Gun Owners Association, the Gun Owners of America. It was not fought. Why? Because they had so many feelers going out to turn around and deal with other ballot initiatives that would have been restrictive to actually ownership of guns, not the buying of guns that was going to cost the purchaser themselves the 6.5% excise tax on firearms and ammunition. It was a wash. But who
just
would
coming at you from different directions?
You can't fight every single thing when you got one or two organizations or one or two sectors of the industry trying to do the same thing.
So
You want to ban something? Let's ban Teslas. Let's turn around and do a ballot initiative to ban electric cars.
yeah,
I mean,
I was listening to somebody the other day. and
that's
they're
how
like,
stupid it is.
Elon Musk, supporting Trump. Somebody was saying, it might have been Rogan. He was saying, imagine all the people that bought Teslas when Elon was a Democrat, and now they're stuck in their leases and they can't stand their fucking car every day. It just made me laugh.
Well, that's funny
it's
because
My buddy's
the
neighbor
idea-
got rid of his license plate.
Really?
When he got his Tesla in 2018, it said "Go Elon," and he just got rid of it.
But just think about, we've politicized businesses, products, wildlife, the clothes you wear, what food you eat. It's ridiculous. The politics, our founding, members of this country that wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, I don't think that they envisioned this, right?
No.
It was set up for political structure.
Can you imagine the founding fathers having the opportunity, like the old movie Going Back to the Future, and then turn around and sitting there and coming in and going, what the fuck?
Yeah.
How did we?
Or even 100 years ago, think about Teddy Roosevelt seeing what's going on right now. Could you imagine that?
And they had some forms of animal extremism then, but there wasn't the animal rights component. There was an animal extremist movement back in the late 1890s about the decimation of wildlife, the extirpation of wildlife. So there was counterintuitive components that these guys wanted to harvest, but also escalate and elevate. These guys didn't want any harvest, but they didn't want it for the right side of it. They didn't want to see it disappear. Now all of a sudden, I speak on behalf of all the mountain lions and the prairie dogs in the state of Colorado. Did they freaking anoint you the king? Right. I mean, yeah, how the hell did that work? I'd like to see that election process because I doubt they had a ballot initiative.
That's another great point. So, okay. How, in a perfect world, if you were in charge of everything, or Trump came to Dan Gates and said, how do we keep biology out of the hands of the general public and in the hands of experts and wildlife biologists? Is there any sort of formula or anything that could happen to where, I don't know if it would be a constitutional thing or something, because at some point, when you're looking at resources and overall health of an ecosystem, I guess, there's got to be some point. I mean, we're doing it. We're doing it right now with global warming and greenhouse emissions.
States' rights are the biggest hurdle when it comes to a holistic, broad brush approach for wildlife, because wildlife is essentially owned by the state and the people of the state. But you have federal lands within each one of the states. So now you got the federal component where wildlife is. But the agricultural side provides a significant amount, if not the overwhelming majority, of wildlife habitat and resources. And to say that, and for anybody that's listening to this that doesn't understand, the giant fir, spruce, beetle kill, deadfall stuff is open space, and it might provide some habitat, but it's not as good as what agricultural fields and farms and production facilities, I say production facilities like just the land that's used. Elk might live there, but they can't survive on that alone. They can't live in the trees. They can't live in the burn areas. They can't live on. So that's what a lot of the federal land has become. And the federal component with recreation and the land use and the cattle grazing and the mining. Wild.
I've never even thought about that from a wildfire perspective.
You think of all that. So just because you have land does not mean it's habitat. I mean, open space, if it doesn't have wildlife on it, it's not wildlife habitat, it's people habitat. Mm-hmm. You might see some deer and elk down in the open space areas of Denver and Douglas County, but it's not wildlife habitat. It's just that they kind of got pushed into that spot because, well, Douglas County and Jefferson County and everybody grew and it all urban sprawled to the point to where, would you rather go up into the forest where there isn't any good habitat? Would you rather come down to where they used to be and now they've tried to be pushed out of?
I mean, there's state wildlife areas that are specifically for wildlife that have been burned.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm.
That's a great point.
But if Trump came to me, which I think he'd have to be off his rocker,
or Biden, for that matter.
Well, then I would tell Joe Biden what I thought. But from a logistical standpoint, in my mind, trying to codify the public trust doctrine of the North American model of wildlife conservation would be imperative to where states' rights would not only be for the state to decide upon. The wildlife resources and the natural resources could be combined in some capacity. States could still manage them, but they're managing them for all of the components of what the federal government can help provide as far as management of the habitat and the natural resources. States don't manage forest lands. State don't manage BLM lands, but they manage the wildlife that's on them. And so there's something there that there's got to be a crossover to where not all states are going to be the same. Tennessee is going to be different than Wyoming.
Well, that's the thing, too. We have bordering states, and wildlife does not recognize borders. I mean, that's why we had wolves here from the get-go, before they even
I think if I was king for a day, or they'd ask me to say, write a document that you think could be beneficial to the entire process, the first thing I would say was to try to create some sort of a document that states could refer back to on the federal position side of things, which we don't have currently. And I say that because the states manage their own wildlife, they do their own resource management, but they depend on the federal government side of the land use, whether it's habitat or not. There has to be some sort of codifying of or qualifying of why we have what we have, and the federal government lands and the resources come into play on that. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that we've done a very good job of that from a grand perspective. We talk about the North American model. We talk about science-based wildlife management. But then we've got this science and that science and this science and that science. We got 961 species of wildlife in this state with 78 game species. What does Alabama have? Well, they don't have 78 game species. They don't have 960 species of wildlife, but they don't have federal land either. They don't have the components that we have in the West. When you really get past Kansas and go west all the way to the Pacific Ocean, it's a different structure. Big game animals are much more prevalent than what they are on the eastern side or in the Midwest. You've got bears and you've got turkeys, which some states are turkeys are big game, which I don't understand that.
Yeah.
Here they're small game, over there they're big game. But they have very few mountain lions, hardly no bighorn sheep. Grizzly bears and wolves are out, except for in a few specific locations like the upper Midwest, the Great Lakes region. Mm-hmm. There's got to be something that is a beneficial component to show what we have and why we have it. And I'm not sure how to get there, but I know damn good and well we don't talk about it. And I know damn good and well that there's not a qualification or a quantification of what those organizations do with the federal government to solidify the ability to manage wildlife and wildlife resources for a concept of something that would be similar to the right to hunt and fish. Now, it doesn't have to be the right to hunt and fish because each state's got its own resources.
I got a question for you on that, and then I want to dive right back to this. But didn't Florida?
They just did.
They
just did. And they passed it like by 67%.
So does that mean that wildlife management can be brought up at the ballot? Or what does that mean?
Well, that's the problem is depending on the state, the way the states are made up, it might be bulletproof and it might not be bulletproof. A right to hunt and fish in the state of Colorado, for the most part, would not do us a damn bit of good because of the way our wildlife is managed.
It's another dumpster fire of money.
Yeah, and so if you had the right to hunt and fish, what does that entail? Does that mean everything? You can go kill hummingbirds with rocks and slingshots? Or what about bald eagles? Can you do that? I mean, it doesn't give you
necessarily a good thing for
some states. It wouldn't be.
Yeah.
But what about the right to wild harvest? Okay, you want to go get pinyon nuts, medicinal plants, mushrooms, deer antlers, firewood. How much stuff do we get off the landscape? This is a funny statement. Pine cones. This is pine cone season because of the Christmas. Do you know there's companies that have contracts with the Forest Service to go out and pick pine cones, not off the trees, off the ground, pick pine cones and be able to salvage them and scent them and sell them at like Michael's and Hobby Lobby and Home Depot for their Christmas season?
Shit, I could give 5,000 of those things just from my yard.
You can probably just go pick them up in your yard right now and then turn around and spray your truck down with cinnamon oil and then turn.
Cinnamon oil.
But stop it. That would be part of this equation because
Right.
it would be a wild harvest. Shane Mahoney with Wild Harvest Initiative with Conservation Visions started this wild harvest concept that is now entailed to, I think it's about 60 some odd countries and dozens of states and provinces. Stop and think about wild harvest and what we do internationally, worldwide, that we could not feed the world's population off of domestic production alone. There has to have a wild harvest component, whether it's Eskimos with seals, whether it's Japanese with whales, whether it's Venezuelans with red stags, or what. There's a wild harvest component that we feed the planet's population with a significant amount of wild harvest. Hunting and fishing play into that, whether it's commercial fishing, whether it's recreational hunting. How much do people turn around and go out and salvage off the landscape that people just take for granted? I'm going to go mushroom season. I'm going to go.
Look at the market on truffles, dude. Oh my.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Ginseng.
Yeah.
Look at the stuff that's wild. Wild harvest is part of human life. And if you can get that point across to people that human life is resilient enough, but it is dependent on wild harvest, what about mountain lions? What about elk? What about
but it's
bighorn
all
sheep?
got to be regulated or we just take more. That's been proven in history.
You go back to the days of Teddy Roosevelt. You talk about the North American model. The North American model could be adapted, but it better be adapted about the North American model of wild harvest conservation as opposed to wildlife management. And I think that both of those things could play into each other. And if I had my wish for the day is to sit around the conversation with groups like the Association, the the Association of Wildlife Conservation Project or partnerships, the 56 organizations in there, get them to start talking about some of this stuff because they don't do a damn good job of talking to the general public. They talk to their members, they talk to the legislators, they talk to Congress, they talk to the commissioners, but they don't talk to the middle of the road people that are dependent on wild harvest, whether they do it or whether they don't.
And this is where all of it lies. I mean, really, that middle ground is who's definitively, at the end of the day, making the final decision.
Yes.
They need to be educated on what they're voting on, and they need to hear the facts and look at some public records.
How would people take it if somebody wanted to do a citizen's petition to ban the harvest of deer and elk?
Oh, in a landslide, I think people would stand up against that.
So where does anybody draw the line? Deer and elk? What about sheep?
Right.
That's a state animal.
Yeah.
Should we allow the harvest of that? I think so because they're scientifically managed, and there's an allowable offtake that can be made through the science side of it because I'm part of the ecosystem.
Well, believe it or not, I mean, they do, even BLM and stuff do a very, very good job of that because we have experts in place. Like rocks, for example. These arrowheads made out of some, and I'm sorry, Donnie, if I'm getting this wrong or anybody that's listening that's a napper, but I believe this was sea plankton or some sort of, like a lot of the cherts and flint and that sort of stuff. So anyways, there's people that go out and harvest these rocks just for this very purpose of napping or making stone tools, and this is something that goes back to archaeology, right? Mm-hmm. But there's regulations on how much you can take from a certain area.
Right.
At a certain time.
That goes into the quotas and the bag limits just like it does on the other stuff. And I think that when you get a chance to go to Whole Foods or Natural Grocers or Walmart or Safeway, and that's where you decide to do your foraging. You know, I joked about this.
I know. That was like my favorite clip that we made, dude.
You sit there and you go, look at these nuts and look at these apples. This one's bruised, put that one back, but that's a good one for somebody else. They just come and take it and put it in the bag. That's what foraging is. You just go out and you pick. Well, we do that on a weekly basis. My wife does it every Friday because she gets 4 points at City Market or something. But she forages. She doesn't hunt anymore, but she turns around and makes sure that the family is supplied with enough food to be able to go, and she gets it from the supermarket.
Yeah.
Why is that any different? Except for the fact that they've got us accustomed to paying.
I love that, man, because if you even take it to material things,
Yeah.
Are you going to buy, if there's the same exact product in damage-proof packaging, but one has a dent in the corner of it, which one are you going to pick?
Mm-hmm. I picked the other one.
Yeah. Because you don't know what happened to that one. Maybe it got ran over by the forklift on the way into the fucking Target or something.
Well, I just went and bought a new television because the other one shot craps, and you got a flat screen television, which is probably not environmentally sound, so I should never watch TV.
We got two of them in here.
Yeah, but there was 2 boxes that had been taped up, and they didn't have any other boxes. And I said, I don't want one of those. And they said, well, why not? And I said, because it looks like it's been returned. Yeah, but they've been inspected by the Geek Squad because it was at Best Buy.
Okay.
And I said, well, I don't know what the Geek Squad did, but why did somebody bring them back to start with?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, were they not clear enough? Were they too big? Did they what? And I ended up they
that's harvesting though.
Yeah, I know. That's yeah. But I got like a $275 deal because I wouldn't take the one, but they wanted me to take it, and so I took it, and it's worked fine. But we have the ability to pick and choose. And if you go through the ability to pick and choose, that's the same thing that hunters do. That's the same thing that anglers do. How many times did we turn around and catch something and release it, but then there's one that we decide to salvage? We harvest. How many times do we pass up on how many deer, whether it's a doe or a buck? I mean, how many days have you hunted for your deer?
I did it yesterday.
Yeah. You know, I mean.
I did it yesterday.
So
I'll show you a photo, man.
Did you bring one home?
No, I'm going to, though.
Were you foraging and picking through the right one, or did you?
100%. I had multiple shots on multiple bucks, not this morning, not last night, but yesterday morning before this. And I passed on it because I'm conscious of what's going on in that landscape, and I don't feel I don't feel confident in the I didn't feel confident in the shot was one of them. The other one was, it's a younger buck. He's perfect for the gene pool. I want to see those deer thrive in there. That's why I'm hunting. That's why the lady that owns the property is letting me hunt on her property, because she understands that and she doesn't hunt herself. She has horses. She has other animals that are impacted. There's bears in there. There's all kinds of different variables that I'm looking at. And the reason why she gives me permission to hunt there is because I'm looking at all of that with her. And she understands that. It's not just a bloodthirst going, boom, there's a buck. Kill
No,
him.
and the kicker is, you weren't starving because you knew that your wife or you went to Safeway or
I went home and ate pizza last night.
Yeah. but there's a component there. You want to turn around and harvest something that will feed your family for the next year.
Yeah, that's
in
what
some
I'm
capacity.
in it for. Yeah.
You don't have to eat last night because, as you said, you got pizza.
I got bison in the freezer.
Yeah.
Freezer.
And if you had mountain lion, you turn around and have mountain lion in there.
100%.
I think that the non-hunter who's been misguided or misled from the anti-hunter doesn't fully understand the concept of what most hunting is. Some of that has been degraded and eroded because of social media, because of what guys post, what people see, the videos, the clips. That for some reason, that's part of the problem of conversation that we have when people have that perspective or that perception. But I honestly believe, too, that the majority of that middle of the road, what I call the in the wind crowd that blows back and forth like packing peanuts in a windstorm. I mean, they're they don't know what side of the fence they're actually going to be on until they find something that resonates with them. But once they find it and they realize that not everybody is out there doing something that might not be tasteful, might not be ethical, might not be moral. Well, I made this comment at a Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting when somebody said, well, this gives the hunters a bad name. And so do pedophile priests, and so do bad cops, and so do turn around and tax attorneys that
It's in everything.
It's in
man.
everything.
Yeah.
So don't categorize me or the entire management system because of one lazy bastard that turned around and did something online or did something illegal or something nefarious, because that's not the way that it is.
Yeah.
Are all animal rights people
A
lunatics?
primary example that made national news is that dude that was in, I think it was Wyoming, where he brought the wolf into the bar and the whole.
He needs to have his ass kicked.
Yeah. And everybody feels that way across the board,
Yes.
including any ethical, mentally stable hunter that's out there.
Yeah, those sorts of people are not concerned with the overall management of our wildlife resources. I think they're about three bricks short of a load myself.
Yeah, and they should be prosecuted to the fullest degree.
The problem is that Wyoming didn't have a law to be able to prosecute him under some sort of, and Charles and Mike and John Stallone and Everett, they all started a letter campaign to get people to sign on to this, to show the disapproval of that, which I agree with, but I don't want to give attention where attention is not due. Mm-hmm. Okay, that was a bad instance. Do we need to condemn it? I think so. Do we need to harp on it? I don't think so. Look at the stuff that happens at the border, southern border. Look at the stuff that happens in downtown New York. Look at the stuff that happens
In Aurora, Colorado.
Yeah, everything that you see is sensationalized, and it makes it look like that everything is that way. And I don't think that's the case. And when it comes to wildlife, the underlying thing is go back to who manages our wildlife resources, and it's Colorado Parks and Wildlife. Mm. There's a regulation book that's that damn thick. I should have brought it.
Well, even just the hunting regulations. I've said this publicly. Like, if you want to educate yourself on hunting without ever hunting or know what the regulations are, you can walk into just about any Walmart,
pick up a brochure,
any fishing supplier.
Yeah.
And there's a free brochure that's got beautiful photos in it. It's got every sort of rule and regulation broken down to the state by imaginary border lines.
Yep.
I mean, it's crazy what you have to follow. And if you don't, it's a federal crime a lot of the times.
Well, and when Senate Bill 150 was coming before the legislature here, which would have significantly altered the agency's ability about resident and non-resident allocations and distribution and so forth, because there was a certain group of resident hunters that were not satisfied with the amount of tags they were getting. It was going through the Senate. What we did on our side, because we didn't think it should be happening at the Senate, we thought it should continue to be within the agency and within the commission.
100%, yeah.
So we took those brochures. I think at the time they were 76 or 78 page brochures, not regulations, but brochures, and gave them to each one of the committee members in the Senate. And they said, "What is this? This is what you're trying to modify." These guys are griping about one paragraph in here. Here's 76 or 78 pages of all of this that goes into. They cast that bill out because they had no idea that it was that intense and that.
And they sit on the commission?
No, on the committee for the.
On the committee. Okay,
They had no idea.
Yeah.
They didn't.
Okay.
They said this is just big game. I said, yeah, there's small game, and then there's waterfowl, and then there's.
There's species specific. Mountain lion has its own book.
Yeah, mountain lion's got its own book, and sheep and goat are in their own book. And you throw all that at them, and they're like, "Well, we didn't know it was regulated that tightly. We didn't know it was that broad."
Well, and I think another thing that people don't understand unless they've bought a big game hunting license is you get a call from Colorado Parks and Wildlife, every individual that purchased one of those, or an email, and sometimes both, and they want you to take the big game harvest survey.
Yep.
And they want to know what you killed, how many hunters you saw, did you think that there was enough animals? They're talking to the people that are actually out there doing it too, to gather some of their data. And I mean, there's nothing else out there like that, I don't think, that you participate. When you go to the DMV and register your vehicle, they don't call you up and go, "Do you think that there was too many cars on the road?" Or "How was the traffic on Tuesday morning?" There's none of that. Well, how many accidents have you been in? You know,
the lunacy of what you're just talking about. I mean, you go to Whole Foods. Do they call you when you get home and say, "Hey, were the apples good enough? Was there enough plums? Yeah. You know, what do you think of the cashews? Was that sufficient?" I mean, we manage wildlife for sustainable populations in perpetuity, but it's an adaptive management plan that goes ups and down. It has peaks and valleys and ebbs and flows, and it changes. A variety of different reasons why it changes. Climate, maybe it's winter kill like what we had up in the Northwest.
It's crazy, yeah.
Maybe it's predation, maybe it's disease, maybe it's urban sprawl, maybe it's hunter harvest, maybe it's a combination of all that stuff. Maybe it's drought. It plays into it, and they have to be able to turn around and say, "This is what we did. Maybe this isn't the right thing to do the last 2 years, but we have to finish our model and we have to go through this." But that's why they're always doing studies. That's why when you turn around and look and see what CPW does, how many deer do you see on the Front Range that got collars on them? Elk that have collars on them. Mountain lions have collars on them. Bears that have ear tags and collars on them. Sheep that got collars. They're doing that not so they could turn around and make the animal look like the red-headed stepchild. It's so they could turn around and collect data and information over time and figure out what they need to do to adapt their management objectives and their plans.
And we hinder that as a general public voting on stuff because then they can't turn around and do their job. The moment that something is a mandate, and these are reactions, like you said, there's so many different variables, whether it's winter kill or whatever. These are reactions that need to be made within, quick decision stuff, right?
Short period.
Okay, we're going to shorten the number of tags. So even if we had a right to fish or hunt, right? They still have to manage those numbers. It can't be like, just because you applied, you get a fishing or a hunting tag.
The agency and the commission will be still the underlying authority to manage the decisions for the management of each one of those species. Mm-hmm. Specifically big game, because big game is a little bit more difficult to manage than what small game is, even though there's bag limits and there's quotas and there's different things on a variety of different small game species, especially on waterfowl because of the federal component. Mm-hmm. Waterfowl is an international component that goes from Mexico through the North Americas all the way to Canada, and then winter up wherever the hell they're going to go and then turn around and come back. They have to be managed from a federal standpoint, but an international federal standpoint to where they don't have a safe haven here and they get to the next boundary and then get blasted. Get the crap blasted out.
Well, wasn't that a concern with the wolves when they started reintroducing them? All this money that we were spending on wolves could easily just go across the Wyoming border and get blasted.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and look what they want to do with bison. Yeah. They want to make it a game species. Look what they want to do with feral horses. They
Listen,
want to
man,
protect
as
them.
a hunter, I want that more than anything. But is it the right thing to do? Absolutely not.
No.
There's no way. We're not set up for it.
They want to bring grizzlies in. They're going to bring
Well,
wolverines in.
yeah.
I mean, Wolverines
what's-
will be the next on the chopping block for a contentious introduction. Whether
Is that
will,
something that we'll be voting on?
Well, that hasn't been determined yet. There's a concept that they don't think that they'll have to turn around and do that, like what they did on the lynx or the otter or the moose. They didn't have to vote on any of that.
Yeah, this is what I don't understand is like, how does something, so us bringing back the Cyrus moose, am I saying that correctly?
Cyrus.
Cyrus. Yeah, okay. Whatever. Big dumb guy. That was never voted on, was it?
Cyrus moose, no. That was done.
So
by the
how
agency.
how does that get put back onto the landscape, and how were wildlife biologists able to do that on their own? Because they did it on their own?
Because they did it on their own, but that was something as far as creating wildlife resources through a growing interest in general sentiment, general public sentiment. That was the same on the lynx, but understand, lynx and wolverine were on the chopping block.
But they would have done that. I'm sorry. My point is, they would have done that with the wolf if it was the right spot for the wolf to be. Correct.
They would have done it with the wolf if it was the right spot for it. We had wolves coming in through the natural cycle of attrition.
Mm-hmm.
Powers that be wanted to do it because they didn't see that wolves were coming in naturally fast enough. It wasn't a mandate for wildlife management, but they made it a mandate for wildlife management because they said, we want the furry velociraptor to be put into the state of Colorado, and we're going to turn around and put it up to the voters to make sure that happens.
Right.
They were already coming in naturally, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife back in 2004 had a wolf management plan and a working group that they started to work through. That wasn't sufficient enough for these individuals, and they wanted to make sure that Colorado Parks and Wildlife didn't have the chance to say anything different. Once the voters voted on it, they were forced, CPW was forced to follow state law that the voters mandated. In theory, this would never happen, but in theory, if the Colorado voters said, we're going to eradicate all antelope in the state of Colorado, and they voted on it, and it was, let's say, 55 to 45, like what we did here, you would play hell saying that the precedent that was set on wolves did not carry over to the extirpation or annihilation of antelope. Mm. That's where ballot box biology needs to be understood. Just because it was wrong over here.
Well, didn't they do that in California on, what's that island that's off the...
Catalina Island.
Well, there's Catalina, but there's another. Was it Roosevelt? Or they had a Roosevelt on there, right? And they were having trouble managing it. I think me and Charles talked about this.
And Charles had been involved in the Catalina Island one as well, for the potential eradication of mule deer on the Catalina mule deer. But you know, it just goes back into: do we want to manage our wildlife by everybody's public opinion?
No. Yeah.
Do we want the Colorado's Rockies pitcher, or the Uber driver, or the florist, or the barbershop owner, or the ag producer, for that matter, making the decision on what should happen with Colorado's wildlife resources? And if we're going to do that, who's it going to affect? And then we turn around and narrow it down to who's going to get a chance to vote on it. Because those people that I mentioned aren't going to be able to turn around and tell the ag producer who lives in Mesa County what his options are, or what he can do or what he can't do. And he damn sure doesn't want somebody making the decision that lives in Denver or Boulder or Larimer County. Now, it came out on the lion deal to where it helped, but then we shouldn't be voting on it anyway.
Right.
Period.
So how, in the perfect world, if you had all the power to make this happen, how do you keep these issues specifically with wildlife and wildlife biology out of the ballot? Is there any?
I think the best way to do it is raise the bar. That 2%. That 2% over 35 Senate districts and the 55% margin of victory, the threshold. That's what the constitutional amendment is.
So once an issue has been brought up and it's been voted against or for, and if it's won by a certain amount, it can't be brought back to the...
If it's
the
constitutional amendment, you'd have to turn around and run a constitutional amendment to reverse it. Example, Amendment 14. Amendment 14, which was banning the use of foothold traps, body gripping devices, and cable restraint devices in 96. we lost that, 52 to 48%. That's a constitutional amendment. If we went back to change that, we would have to reverse that by 55 to 45, like what we did on here. In this state now, with 5.9 million people, the likelihood of that happening is probably not very good. But if you wanted to turn around and reverse the wolf issue, which is statutory, the way it sits right now, you would have to turn around and win by 50.9 or 50.1. You could turn around and reverse that by just flipping it from where it actually was, because it wasn't constitutional, it was statutory.
And that has to be, there's a 4-year period in between that, right?
There's a 4-year period only because of the way that the ballot initiative process is set up. Odd years, like next year in 2025, could be a tax-based ballot initiative. Even years can be about anything, as we found out this year.
Yeah.
I mean, and the kicker is if you really want to get down to the nut cutting on this, although we ended up with 14 ballot initiatives, 7 constitutional and 7 statutory, there was many, many, many more that were attempted to get on. They just didn't make the threshold. They didn't have the financing. They didn't have the right language. They went through the title board. They were rejected.
Probably hundreds, huh?
Nah, it wasn't hundreds, but it was a couple dozen more. I mean, stop and think. We had 14 for the state, and then in cities like Denver and Colorado Springs and Boulder, there was other ones that were city or county specific.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Ours in Fremont County was roughly 2.5 pages. In the city and county of Denver, I heard there were 3.5 to 4.
I just don't even know how we're looking at things long term if it's just dumpster fire after dumpster fire. You know what I mean? And you're focused on those things. It does not make any sense to me. Like, there should just be, in my perfect world, there should just be cut and dry lines on what you can vote on and what you can't. Like, are we going to start voting on how they engineer bridges? Like,
or as one individual said on a newscast, you're going to turn around and do it on the medical side of things,
right?
What do you think about brain tumors? Is it okay? Should you be able to vote on? Yeah, but I don't. Fine.
I don't have one.
Yeah, I'm not going to have an abortion either. So why should I? Why am I voting on that? Right. I mean, if there again, go back to this is controversial subject matter here.
Right.
Do you think we should have an abortion? Well, maybe you do, maybe you don't. But why do I get to vote on it when I'm never going to have one? Period.
Yeah.
And I don't want people screwing with my stuff when they're never going to have to deal with the stuff that I have to deal with.
Yeah.
Period.
That's a great point.
I don't want people deciding my life, just like Pro Animal Future that you popped up here. We want to alter the way people change, the way people live, and change what they eat and how they live their daily lives. Screw you.
Yeah. I agree.
You.
I agree.
Quit trying to alter me when when what I do doesn't affect you.
100%. Let's leave it on that note, Dan. I've taken up more time than you were willing to give me today, I think, and I really appreciate you making the trip.
It took me longer to get here,
in the snow and all that shit, man. Dude,
that should be a ballot initiative right there.
Yeah.
The evergreen roads cannot be utilized by anybody that doesn't know how to drive from the morning of 7 a.m.
Yeah, you got to go take a test in the Safeway parking lot and do donuts like I did as a kid,
Like I never used my brakes so much in my entire damn life.
Oh, my God. That's the most dangerous part about it all.
Yes. No,
but more importantly, Dan, before we jump off, is there anything you got coming up that you want to plug or any stuff happening?
I think there's people get complacent with mediocrity, and they damn sure get complacent with success. We have a meeting coming up, Colorado Parks and Wildlife, January 8th and 9th at 6060 Broadway in downtown Denver. Now, that doesn't affect the people that are listening from New Mexico and Arizona, but they should pay attention because there's going to be a lot of lion discussions at that meeting, and people can get online at the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission website, and they can watch that meeting live, or they can watch it taped afterwards. Mountain lions will continue to be in the headlines from now until they're not, but it won't stop in January, and it won't stop in February, and it won't stop in March. The legislative session starts on January 8th. The meeting for Colorado Parks and Wildlife starts on January 8th. There's going to be a hell of a lot of things going on from January, February, March, April, and through the end of the legislative session in May, and with upcoming commission appointments. And you got to stop and look. If this was the first time this in a long, long time in the country that a ballot initiative pertaining to wildlife was defeated resoundingly, like what we did. We beat the hell out of them. It's worth buying popcorn and a whiskey or a cup of coffee or whatever somebody likes to drink and paying attention to what happens in Colorado over the next 5, 6, 8, 10, and 12 months, because this governor did not take this loss lightly, because his spouse didn't take it lightly.
Sure.
Prairie Protection of Colorado did not take it lightly. The Cats Aren't Trophy people did not take it lightly. The Wild Animal Sanctuary with Pat Craig did not take it lightly.
So you think it's a comeback with a vengeance type?
I think they're going to come back with a vengeance, and I think we're going to kick them square in the mouth and in the nuts at the same time.
I love it, dude.
But people need to pay attention, because what I don't want to do from our perspective, for what we're doing, I mentioned 2.5 million views down to 1.3 million views. Okay, we're not kicking a bunch of stuff out like what we were. We're still kicking out some information, but it's not catastrophic.
The dust is just settling
Yeah.
right now, yeah.
Don't get complacent with mediocrity. This stuff is going to continue to build up. And I can tell you that in the last 2.5 weeks, at a minimum, we've been hit up by 6 different states on different reasons and different circumstances and issues that have said, what can you do to help us? How do we emulate what you've created?
God, it's crazy, man.
It ain't stopped here, and it ain't going to stop at those locations. And whether they decide to stay here or whether they want to go to New Mexico or Utah or try something additional in Washington and Oregon, where Samantha Berger Miller came from with Cats Aren't Trophies, whether they want to escalate their position, that NASC summit that I just came from, there's 350 legislators from around the country that are part of the National Assembly of Sportsmen's Caucuses. They know that they have this stuff at their door, and they want to try to replicate and duplicate what we created so they can be victorious. Not to say that ours is perfect, but I told you before this, 33 ballot initiatives that went wildlife-related this year, 32 of them passed and Colorado failed. That sets the tone and the narrative for us to be able to elevate our position and enhance our message, but it also should be a wake-up call to the other states that had to deal with that stuff. Minimal is what some of it might have been, to say, holy crap, if they won here on this little one, whether it was Sunday hunting or whether it was dove hunting, and maybe it was the use of beagles or whatever the hell it might be, if they won there through a statutory process of ballot initiatives, where do you think they're going to go next? They're not going to want to come back here, except for they're already here, and they're trying to finish their job on mountain lions and bobcats. But they're going to every other state. 26 states have this process, and there was 33 ballot initiatives pertaining to wildlife.
That's crazy.
This is not over, and I would encourage people to turn around and get engaged in our state.
Whether you're a hunter or not, yeah, for sure.
Continue to follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Continue to see what we actually got in the hopper. Continually check out SaveTheHuntColorado.com. We need money. We're always going to need money because we're not a membership organization. Our money was coming in up and down, back and forth all the time. People sent checks. People got online. We still get some checks coming in, but people don't see the sense of urgency, and they don't see the need. You'll see the ads, and matter of fact, I saw 2 of them last night during the football game. The ASPCA and the Humane Society of the United States, for $19 a month, you can turn around and save this animal, whatever, which is fine if people want to do that. But how about turning around and putting it toward some of the wildlife issues that we have to sustain? Wildlife issues. I'm not talking about hunting and fishing issues. I'm talking about wildlife issues.
Absolutely.
Money is going to win the game in the long run until these processes and procedures are worked out, until where we either quantify or qualify what we're going to do with our wildlife management resources. And if it's going to continue to go through the ballot, we have to have money. If we're going to alter that system, we have to have money. If we're going to turn around and try to look at a different path and detour the opposition, we have to have money.
You guys got to have support. You can't do it all yourself, Dan. We've proven that, right?
Yeah.
And, dude, I'm just so thankful to have you. This is have you as a friend, A. You're an amazing friend. But also just what you've done for wildlife, what you've done for hunting in general, stepping up to the plate, man. I want to thank your wife too for everything that she's gone through. You know what I mean? I've talked to her on the phone. She's a sweetheart.
Yeah.
You know, like, I don't think people understand how much you've uprooted your life, your business, and everything, and dedicated to this. And I'm grateful to have you, and I think the community is too. And I think that we should continue to support you. And I don't think that this is over. The Victories, this is just the beginning, man.
Just the beginning.
Yeah.
Just the beginning. We got 2 more years of this governor in the office, but that's two years of a lame duck governor to turn around and try to complete what they want. And the hook and bullet crowd needs to make sure that this is an ongoing fight. Mm-hmm. I talked to some guys the other day, and I won't belabor the conversation, but
No, we're good. We got as long as you need.
They said, what can we do? I said, how much time did you put into this effort? Well, we sent some money in. I said, how much time did you put into getting preference points in 9 different states to see what you could draw?
That's a great point.
How much time did you spend scouting here when you never went to a commission meeting here? Mm-hmm. How much time did you turn around and look at Onyx Hunt and Go Hunt and Spartan Forge and all the other stuff, which I have no problem with. They're all great partners for our cause. How much time did you spend on that, and you never wrote a letter to a legislator? You never turned around and got on and did virtual testimony? You never provided any input from your perspective? How much time did you do for that? Because if you didn't, shame on you, you son of a bitch.
Well, it was this was really truly won by Grassroots. You pounding the pavement, the airlines, I mean, all over the place, talking to everybody and anybody, being the face of it. But then also it turned around, and like I said, for me, nobody wants to sound dumb when they're talking about it, and everybody wants the facts. And you provided a lot of that and was kind of the feeder to it. And I think it was really that Grassroots thing. Like, I just recently drove up to Steamboat, I guess it was last month, to do a bison experiment up there at Eagles Wing Ranch with my friend Donnie. And it was right before the election, and I must have passed
signs.
I bet you I passed 1,000 signs, whether they were this big or 8. I mean, it was incredible, man. That made my drive.
Yeah.
Seeing that, I was like, holy shit, man, look at the support.
Yeah.
And that's all
There's 3
because
of them on my street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're still up.
Are they?
They're still up.
We I got permission from the landlord here. Mm-hmm. I had him on all the windows going down this thing, and the stoplight and how many people. Yeah. So it was really cool, man. It was really cool to just see that. And it made me feel good that people are kind of waking up to some of this stuff, because this proved it, man. Like, pay attention to what's going on in your community, what affects you, what it'll affect your future, even if you're not pulling the trigger or throwing a fishing line in the river or mountain biking, or who cares, right? Like, for the greater good, just pay attention to what's going on. Vote, educated. And
but it doesn't
try to
stop.
Educate other people, man.
Yeah, but it doesn't stop on a. This was brought to the attention through the ballot to a lot of people that never even understood that we had beaten it back multiple times at the commission and at the legislature. Mm-hmm. They were never aware of it. But we had no social media outreach, and we had no podcast, and we had no communication. I mean, we were as dumb as get when it came to trying to outreach.
Just what I learned about lion hunting. I'm not a lion hunter, right? I've been on a lion hunt. What I learned about lion hunting from this process in the last year, I know way more now than I ever did. And I think the general public did.
Oh, yeah.
I think they were educated, on so many different levels, whether it was through film, podcast, short clips.
Just look at the news coverage we got in Denver. Look at the Kyle
crazy.
Clark stuff. Look at the interviews. Luke and I were on multiple interviews opportunities, whether it was television, whether it was radio, newspaper stuff. Look at what was given to us because of the awareness that we created, that I think the community as a whole was yearning for information. Now, if you look at the vote, not everybody voted for us and not everybody voted for them. But there was that gap in between that made the difference to where they said, I want the facts. I want the data. I want the information from the experts. And we were able to provide that. And if they didn't listen to us long enough and they did their own research, when Parks and Wildlife was going through and looking at who was investigating and who was searching on their websites, They weren't just looking at what state park to get a booking for next year. They were looking about bobcats and mountain lions, and they found out from the experts to be able to do that. That's where we need to go.
And that's directly where you guys were pointing them the whole time, which I love. So, and that's where I was too. So, Dan, thank you so much. Let's wrap this up. And anytime you need a seat here or you need something, we're here for you. So,
well, we might do something, and we might do something on our own, and we might need some help in babysitting. So,
absolutely,
everybody keep that in the hopper, and
we got your back on that too. So.
Appreciate it.
And we'll let everybody know if something does come up or pop up. Dan's really good about letting me know. So
cool.
We'll let you all know.
Thanks
for listening, Jeremy. Appreciate you, Dan.
Thanks.
Take us away. Thanks for listening to the Mountainside Podcast. If you haven't had a chance to do this already, please take a moment, follow, like, subscribe, or rate on whatever platform you catch the Mountainside Podcast at. If you'd like some more information on upcoming episodes, safety tips, access to all of our affiliates, and all the badass discounts that we get here at the Mountainside Podcast, check out themountainsidepodcast.com.